From both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Senior MPs call for a major shake-up at Parliament as the Westminster case continues.
A very good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of May. Welcome to the programme with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. These are the stories leading today.
Yeah, Westminster, I think, is going to lead for us this morning, and we're going to be covering that very, very shortly. As well as that, civilian evacuations from Mariupol in Ukraine are going to continue over the weekend. More than 100 people were allowed to leave the steelworks.
Yes, we're talking about that and radical action needed in Westminster. Senior MPs in the House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle have called for major changes to working practices there.
56, well, I think we've done that story of Mariupol, right, okay. Let's just come back in vision and get on, because we obviously can see...
The autocue demons this morning.
There's a lot of people on May Day time today for the bank holiday. Hope you're going to be enjoying yours, whatever it is. We'll hit everything a kick here and get it reset. But we're going to be talking about lots of things, including calls to clean up Westminster. So let's have our first guest in. Just come ahead and do that, or else we'll be going nowhere. And so basically, Lindsay Hoyle and Andrea Leadsom are leading calls for urgent changes in Westminster following all the sexual misconduct claims we're hearing and bullying claims about out MPs as well.
Yeah, over the weekend, of course, we heard that Neil Parish had decided to resign as MP. This is after, of course, he was accused of having watched porn inside Parliament. Lots of questions about whether or not, in fact, the front of the Times this morning saying, was the porn MP searching for a Dominator combine harvester? People saying that a tractor fetish led him into muck of another kind. All of this, of course, potentially hugely damaging for Westminster.
The theory is that this man who says he was searching for tractors, but this tractor brand was called Dominator.
Yeah, this is a theory. It hasn't been confirmed, but apparently another farmer that he worked with at Somerset County Council said, that he was aware of a combine harvester by the name Dominator. Look, lots of speculation, a lot of jokes, but a very serious matter at heart, of course. Let's get more reaction to all of this from Alice Denby, who is the Deputy Editor of CAPX, which is for the Centre for Policy Studies magazine. Welcome to the show this morning.
Good morning.
Look, how damaging is all of this to the reputation of Parliament, first of all?
I mean, obviously, it's very damaging, but I think I'd like to say, especially to any young women who are watching who might be interested in a career in politics, that Westminster can be a wonderful place to work. I worked for an MP for 5 years, and it's fantastic. I mean, the opportunities you get there can be amazing. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if I hadn't had that job. So I just want to say, it's not the sort of hell cesspit that some might present it at. That said, there are these kind of power dynamics at play in this place that make it possible for this culture of bullying and sexual harassment to flourish. And, I mean, it's basically a Victorian system. It was only in 2018 that staff like me who worked for MPs has any kind of independent system of complaints if they had a problem with the MP that they worked for. So I think changes are needed, but I think we need to get a sense of proportion. You know, if you look at who's in the cabinet, you look at, you know, 2 of the great offices of state are held by women. It's not a place where women can't succeed.
No, but I mean, to say we need to get a sense of proportion, do you think it's acceptable for an MP to be watching porn in Parliament? And what message does that send to lots of people, not just parliamentarians, but to society at large? Young men growing up thinking, well, if that old boy is able to do that in one of the highest offices in the land, then I can certainly, you know, skip off school or whatever it might be. The message is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not appropriate in any workplace. I mean, Dominator or not, you can see how he might have made that mistake, but he said himself he went a second time, and God knows what he was thinking.
What do you think, Alice, the people, the voters in the red wall districts are thinking, bearing in mind these local elections looming and publicity like this, obviously affecting, I think, people's perceptions?
So what I've heard is that these kind of scandals are actually playing worse in the kind of more traditional, safe Tory seats in the south, whereas in the red wall, people are more likely to think that MPs and politicians are all the same. So I think with the local election results, it'll be interesting to see what happens geographically and how these things play out differently.
What about these 56 MPs who are under investigation, 3 of whom are in the cabinet? I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday was saying that, you know, there are a few bad apples within Parliament. How do you deal with those? How do you weed them out? And how do you make sure that this culture doesn't become the norm?
I think the first thing to say is that these complaints are coming forward now because, as I said, there was only the complaint system only existed since 2018. So I think what we're seeing is things working their way slowly through the system. But I think we certainly need that system to speed up. Andrea Leadsom, who did wonderful work on this, she set up the independence complaints system when she was Leader of the House, has said that we need a complete overhaul. We need an independent HR system for MPs so that they can choose their researchers, but they don't employ them, they don't make those decisions about them. And I think that would be a good start.
What about Lindsay Hoyle with this radical overhaul? And you talk about the work Andrea Leadsom's done. She's been quoted as well, as you say, as trying to tackle this. I mean, how quickly can these changes be made?
I think it can't come quickly enough. But I also think we need to be beware of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So as I say, Westminster is a very unique workplace, but that's one of the things that makes it so special. And I think there's a bit of sort of pearl-clutching hypocrisy about complaints about the drinking culture, for example. I don't think we want a situation where MPs feel that they can never socialise with journalists or with staff. I don't think that would be good for the career prospects of younger researchers, and I don't think it would be good for getting these stories to come ultimately into the papers.
What was your experience at the bars, though, in the Palace of Westminster?
I have to say, I've worked at both a national newspaper and in Westminster, and the bullying and sexual harassment culture was worse at a newspaper than it was in Westminster. Having said that, I arrived in Westminster, I was a bit older, Some of my colleagues were very young, just out of university, and I think they had a far worse time than I did, I think. And again, as I said, that's because of the power dynamics. It's the more vulnerable, the weaker you are in Parliament, the more of a target you are, I think.
OK. Alice, thank you very much indeed. Alice Denby's the deputy editor of CapEx, which is an online political website. Thank you very much indeed. Let's now move on to Ukraine with the time at 6:07. After the United Nations confirmed that a safe passage operation had begun in the Mariupol steelworks on Saturday, around 100 civilians have since been evacuated from Mariupol to Ukraine-controlled territory.
Yeah, Frank Ledwidge joins us to fill us in on the latest in Ukraine. Very good morning to you, Frank. So, look, overnight, these evacuations, understandably, have been suspended. We're expecting them to be resumed this morning. And obviously, after the awful conditions that we've been hearing testimony of, that they were under, it couldn't come soon enough, but still 200, very small number.
Yes, it is. It's probably between 10 and 15% of the total civilians. Let's not forget that there are probably 2,000 military in there as well, and they're trying to hold on. I would suspect them are given orders to hold on for another couple of weeks. So yes, it's a start, and it took an awful lot of negotiation to get there.
So what's going to happen, Frank, if and when they are out? What happens next?
I think the Russians will continue what they've been doing. They've shown no particular inclination to treat civilians any different than combatants. So once this particular tranche is out, yesterday there was no assault on Azovstal for reasons you've already outlined, Eamonn. They'll continue to bombard it and seal it off. The problem for the Russians, actually, is that they've planned a victory parade for about this time next week, the 9th of May, which will somewhat rained on by the fact that, of course, Azovstal still exists, the 11 square kilometres of the Ukrainian garrison there.
Look, if these humanitarian corridors are working now, is there any potential of getting humanitarian aid into the steelworks? Talking about people having to amputate limbs, gangrenous wounds, people starving, children going grey-haired, watching their parents die, people's teeth falling out from the trauma. I mean, it's been absolutely hell on earth inside those steelworks. Is it possible for it to be a two-way street?
Well, Isabel, what you've hinted at there is the idea that the Russians have any kind of concern at all for the care and health of non-combatants, and of course they don't. If it suits their purposes, there may be some kind of supply. I personally doubt it. That's not the idea of siege. President Putin quite publicly gave the order that not a fly should be getting into the Azovstal complex. So I suspect there will be no aid going in. There may be a few people coming out for presentational purposes, because that's what this is. And the siege will continue, and it may continue for some time. It will continue essentially till the Azovstal defenders run out of food, water and ammunition.
When the history of this war comes to be written, how will these resistance fighters, these people incarcerated in that steelworks, be remembered?
So far, it's been one of the keystone or keynote defences in recent military history. I think for Ukrainians, it'll go down in history as something symbolic, like Stalingrad did, paradoxically defended to a great extent by Ukrainian soldiers in 1942-43. Interestingly, by the way, one of the major holdouts in Stalingrad was the Red Flag tractor and steel factory, which held on for 3 months, just as this will do. But more importantly, I would think presently, what this shows is it's taken the Russians 2 months, well, about 6 weeks, to reduce Mariupol. Mariupol, by the way, is a big city. It's about the same size as Newcastle. The towns that they're trying to strike now, trying to take now in the southeast, well, much of the southeast, I should say, is also built up. And unlike Mariupol, those places will have been prepared for defense. So no Russian soldier is going to relish entering a Ukrainian city now, and rightly not. It's no wonder it takes 5 soldiers for every defender to take a city. So they won't be looking at places like Sloviansk, Kramatorsk and Severodonetsk with any relish at all now, because they're going to hold on in the same way. That's down in the Donbass area, by the way, let alone any larger city such as Odessa, they may have their eyes on.
Meanwhile, over the weekend, more high-profile visits, not least the UK Ambassador Melinda Simmons saying she feels comfortable to return the UK office to Kyiv, which was really positive over the weekend. And then Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House from the States, coming in, meeting President Zelensky, and Angelina Jolie in Lviv for the UN, meeting refugees there. So a sign of the stability returning to other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think in the west and north of the country, the Ukrainians are very keen to try and reassert some idea of normality. But let's not forget that when Antonio Guterres visited Kiev the other day, a couple of cruise missiles were quite deliberately logged into Kiev as a message. Now, they didn't come anywhere near him, and Kiev's a city the size of, it's much bigger actually than Birmingham. So nobody's under any danger. But sure, they want to preserve the idea that Ukrainians are going concern, that it's a state that's still working, that most of it isn't destroyed. And of course, to start that long process now, even as the war goes on, of pulling in that Western investment to try and reconstruct the tragic damage that's been sustained so far. And by the way, there's going to be an awful lot more over the next months and years.
Okay, Frank, thanks very much indeed. Appreciate your perspective on things. We'll leave it there.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, here we are on a May Day bank holiday. Bluebells are out everywhere. Have you seen bluebells?
Yeah, stunning.
Yeah, it's lovely when the flowers do that. And front of all the newspapers today, this beaming picture of Princess Charlotte. It is her 7th birthday. But she's not alone, is she, Isabel?
She's not. She's cradling her dog. The dog's called Orla. Of course, very similar looking to Ludo, their previous dog, but very much loved family pet there. And, of course, all these pictures, as always, taken by their very talented photographer mother. The Duchess.
But she's in the right place at the right time, isn't she? The thing is that a lot of the papers are trying to compare Charlotte looking like her mother.
And you're not buying it?
Not buying it.
It's the long brown hair, that's all.
She is her father. Father's eyes, father's smile.
You say that, I just see the Queen. I think she looks like the Queen.
I think she does look like the Queen as well, a very young Queen as well. That's a nice picture to cheer you up. So whatever you're doing today, wherever you're heading out, if you're going to be dancing in the Bluebells or whatever.
Around the maypole.
Give us a shout today and get in touch with us. GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News as well. So send us your pictures, tell us your stories, where's a good place to head, and because we've got all that ahead of us from 9:30 this morning. We're finishing 9:30, then we'll have what we're going to do. What we're going to do for the rest of the day. The time, it's coming up to 6:15. Here's the latest news.
Lancashire Police have confirmed that a body found in the forest of Bowland is that of 33-year-old mother of two, Katie Kenyon, who disappeared on April the 22nd. A post-mortem examinations found that head injuries were the cause of death.
Magistrates have had their sentencing powers doubled in a bid to tackle the court backlog, in a move that's been criticised as counterproductive by some lawyers. They'll now be able to hand out jail terms of up to a year for a single offence. That's twice as long as the previous maximum.
The Prime Minister is considering giving housing association tenants the right to buy. The Telegraph reports that Boris Johnson's asked officials to draw up plans to help young people struggling to get onto the property ladder in England.
New research warns that delays in passport processing could cost £1.1 billion in cancelled trips over the summer.
The Centre for Economics and Business Research estimates that only a 50% probability of a successful and timely passport renewal process for travellers.
The Education Secretary will write to schools to urge them to use the government's flagship National Tutoring programme. Schools and tuition providers have previously reported problems with online portal, describing it as dysfunctional.
OK, coming up, we'll be looking back on the Falklands War and the anniversary of one of the more controversial aspects of the conflict, that is the sinking of the Argentinian warship, the Belgrano. But first of all, here's your bank holiday forecast.
To tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy and in some places rather misty, with patchy light rain in the south and the southwest. Let's take a look at the detail. So a cloudy start then in the southwest, with patchy mist and hill fog for some patchy light rain too, or drizzle possible, mainly in the east. The The southeast mostly dry with bright or sunny spells towards the northeast. Cloudier to the southwest, a little rain possible as well. South Wales will have a cloudy, murky and damp start. There'll be low cloud and hill fog with some patchy light rain too. It'll be a cloudy, rather murky but mostly dry start across the northwest of England. Some patchy mist and hill fog likely, but it will soon brighten up. The northeast of England will also have a mostly cloudy start to the bank holiday, a little mist and a little hill fog too, but the clouds steadily lifting from the north. Then there'll be a brighter start to the bank holiday across southern Scotland. It'll be dry with early bright or sunny spells developing widely, winds fairly light as well. Cloudier in Northern Ireland, a few bright or sunny spells in places, although the odd light shower is possible first thing. Most will be dry. And gradually turning drier and brighter through the day with sunny spells and a few mostly light showers developing, feeling rather warm too. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good to see you again. This is Eamonn and Isabel. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Still to come on this morning's show, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News.
Is today the last day you can vote in that trick thing?
I think so, yeah.
They've messed about. They told us it was closed last Thursday, and then they extended it probably for somebody's advantage somewhere.
I've seen everyone touting for votes, so we may as well get in there and say, if you feel like it, trick.org.uk.
That's it, yeah.
Television Radio Industry Club Awards, and you can nominate us, you can nominate the programme, and obviously all the staff and team who work here would really
vote early,
appreciate that.
vote often. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, we're going to talk about the Falklands now. One of the commanders of a British submarine which sank a key Argentinian warship during the Falklands War says he stands by the decision to attack the vessel.
Well, today marks the 40th anniversary of the sinking of the warship General Belgrano by the British submarine HMS Conqueror. Loss of 323 lives on board the Belgrano. Now, this continues to be one of the most controversial moments in the conflict with Argentina. Argentina claims that this was illegal because the Belgrano was allegedly sailing away from the war zone and returning to port.
Well, as our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has been looking into it.
There was a cheer as we heard the explosion, and a captain reported from the periscope seeing it. because we had done what our government tasked us to do, and we were very professional about it. Followed almost instantaneously with absolute silence, and as everyone had their own thoughts, thinking there were over 1,000 sailors on board the Belgrano and they were doing what their government tasked them to do.
It's 40 years since Vice Admiral Sir Tim McClement was a young lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy, second in command of the submarine HMS Conqueror, as it shadowed and then fired on the Argentinian cruiser General Belgrano. It was one of the most controversial episodes in the Falklands War, with claims the Belgrano was sailing away from a 200-mile UK-imposed exclusion zone around the islands. But Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher agreed with her senior military commanders that the Belgrano posed a direct threat to the Royal Navy task force heading for the South Atlantic.
Admiral Woodward had 2 carriers and not very many Harriers, and the Argentinians had over 200 aircraft, so we had to protect our carriers, because if we lost one, then that would be the end of our ability to retake the islands. And at the time, on the beginning of May, Admiral Woodward believed there was a pincer movement with the Argentinian aircraft carrier to the northwest of the islands, coming with his escorting destroyers, and to the southwest of the islands, the Belgrano group with two destroyers as well.
The Belgrano, which began life as the American light cruiser USS Phoenix, had survived Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, only to succumb to 2 Royal Navy torpedoes. 323 Argentinians died on board the Belgrano. This notorious Sun headline at the time was later toned down as the extent of the loss of life became apparent.
It was the big turning point. They knew from that moment, I can remember being told, I was with the troops in the Canberra at the time, that this had happened. And within 2 days, of course, the Sheffield was sunk. And everybody in charge knew there was going to be a real war. Whatever talks might or might not happen, there was going to be a real war. And they realised there were still going to be problems, big problems.
Safeguarding the Royal Navy Task Force was at the heart of the decision to sink the Belgrano. Vice Admiral McClement says the actions of those on board HMS Conqueror were fully justified.
One regrets loss of life in war. Galtieri had invaded the islands. He needed to be evicted, and you use brutal force to try and shorten the war as quickly as possible so that you succeed. The Belgrano was
There's no doubt the sinking of the Belgrano was a decisive moment in the Falklands conflict, as the Argentinian Navy retreated to port and played no further part in the war. Mark White, GB News.
You know, Isabel, you weren't born there, but for many people, it seems like yesterday, and the controversy surrounding all of this, and I'm sure a lot of you watching who had someone in the forces or probably ex-forces, and I think a lot of British people will be saying, what is all the kerfuffle about? This was the biggest threat that Argentina possessed. They invaded the islands. This was their biggest warship, and it was taken out by a British submarine. And yet there was like constant
key areas in the capital for the election.
Traditionally, London has been red in a sea of blue in the south-east of England, with 21 of London's 33 boroughs currently under Labour's control. But the Lib Dems are defending their stronghold in southwest London, where they have 3 MPs. They're hoping to increase their 3 Lib Dem-run councils on Thursday. In 2018, Barnet and Wandsworth voted Conservative. Croydon continued to vote Labour. But could that all change in this election?
On May the 5th, people in Croydon will vote in a new mayor for the first time following a referendum last year. And a key issue dominating the local council elections is Labour's handling of the borough's finances after the council had to declare bankruptcy in 2020.
They've been given the money, where's the money gone? You know, it's not them suffering, it's everyone else suffering, and the area's turning into, quite frankly, a dump. You know, and they need to be held accountable.
They need to be brought to question. They need to tell everyone openly how they spent that money, who took the money, where did it go, and we need to get it back.
I think we really need to press on, try and shake off that anger and see what we can do to make things better.
On the other side of London, Keir Starmer has been out campaigning in Barnet, which has the highest Jewish population in the UK. Labour lost the seat in 2018 under Jeremy Corbyn amidst criticism of the party's handling of anti-Semitism. Daniel Koski is director of the London Jewish Forum.
I think we'll see people who previously were historic Labour voters but felt like they couldn't vote for the Labour Party at the last election, feeling like they probably can vote for the Labour Party this time around. But I think what's going to be particularly interesting is, are the Labour Party going to be able to win back those Jewish swing voters who at the last election were absolutely not going to vote for the Labour Party, but this time around can they convince them to vote for the Labour Party if they are, say, unhappy with the government?
The Conservatives have held Wandsworth for over 40 years, keeping popular with the lowest average council tax in the country. But political scientist Sir John Curtis says polls suggest they may lose it to Labour.
We can anticipate something like 2-3% swing against the Conservatives across London. Nothing very large, but if that were to happen, the odds are that would probably be sufficient, given there are a number of marginal wards for the Conservatives to be unseated. So they're going to have to do bucking the trend once again if they're going to hang on to this borough.
After a difficult few weeks for Boris Johnson, Thursday will be the first electoral test to see whether it will impact the Conservatives in the ballot box. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, what is impacting you? What's important to you in these local government elections? Because that's what really matters. We are GB News, the People's News Channel.
Yeah, coming up, we'll be having the biggest stories from the papers today with Liz Kershaw and Chris Akabusi. That's in a few moments. See you then.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Just after 6:30 on this Bank Holiday Monday, a very good morning to you. This is Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. Breakfast here on GB News. Thanks for your company.
Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines. Ukraine's President Zelensky says the first group of 100 civilians have been evacuated from Mariupol's steelworks and will arrive in Zaporizhia today. A spokesperson for the United Nations says Operation Safe Passage is being coordinated between Kyiv and Moscow.
Magistrates have had their sentencing powers doubled in a bid to tackle a court backlog in a move that has been criticised by some lawyers as counterproductive. Magistrates will now be able to hand out jail terms of up to a year for a single offence, twice as long as the previous maximum.
The Prime Minister is considering giving housing association tenants the right to buy. The Telegraph reports that Boris Johnson has asked officials to draw up plans to help young people struggling to get onto the property ladder in England.
And we'll be talking about this very shortly. 3 new photographs have been released to mark Princess Charlotte's 7th birthday. The young royal is seen with her arm around her family pet, the Cocker Spaniel Orla. The photograph was taken by her mum. So much to talk about in the papers now, and it was just that story about magistrates being given the power to double sentencing. Liz Kershaw is here, and the Olympian athlete Chris Akabusi as well. And it made me think of Boris Becker over the weekend and in jail. And I just thought to myself, is that an appropriate thing to do, to put that man in jail for 6 or 7 years? And I say this because I was watching a drama on ITV called The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, their deception as well. Oh, they hate deception in this country. If you steal money or fiddle money from the establishment, you're behind bars. So this woman was sent 7 years to prison. I think her husband was the same. But it just got me thinking the two things, and I thought, how does that benefit anyone? You could put them to work. You could make them work for charities. You could do... They're no danger to society. Becker's not a danger to society.
No.
Do you think it's right putting him behind bars?
Well, it's not going to be a deterrent to him, is it? Because he's lost everything. He's not going to do it again. As you say, it's not protecting society. But I remember as a child saying to my dad, you know, remember the Great Train robbery? And I remember where they stopped the train and stole the equivalent of millions and millions in today's money. And
a man died.
Yeah, he got hit over the head and later died.
Yeah.
So one of them was a murderer. But I remember saying to my dad as a child when they'd been sentenced to 30 years or life or forever, oh, why did they get so long? And there must have been a murder case at the same time and a lesser sentence. I remember my dad saying to me very profoundly, because, Elizabeth, in this country we value money more than human life. And that's always stuck with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think they'd make an example of him, aren't they, to deter other people from doing the same thing. It is really sad because I'm old enough to remember 17-year-old Becker burst on the scene, joy of life, and obviously has he got bankrupt? He's hidden all of this money, and I suspect over the next couple of years there's going to be a lot of people through the cost of living crisis who are going to want to do something similar, and the powers that be have decided that they're going to make an example of Boris to deter other people from doing the same thing.
Well, it's just a talking point. If you've got a view, get in touch with us and let us know. Violent crime, murders, child abuse, you know, no problem. Lock them up, throw away the key. But things
There's
like...
still an argument getting them to work as well. I've never understood why we don't make use of our prison population more. In terms
chain gangs, breaking rocks and hot sun.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it in a humane way, but I've never understood you've got, you know, perfectly fit and healthy people wasting away when you could be getting them to tackle some of society's problems. It's an argument.
Yeah, well, and it would be a way of them restitution, you know, contributing to society. So, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
There was a story yesterday about HMRC here, retrospective recoupment of tax. HMRC are now pursuing thousands of families for inheritance tax, which they believed they'd cleared up correctly, and HMRC are now going back and saying, no, you owe the state. So there'll be a lot of ordinary people who had no intention of committing fraud who are now, you know, what they're going to do with those people.
Money that has already had tax paid on it, and it's been repossessed again. Look, here's a story, Liz. You've dealt with this. This is from page of the Daily Telegraph. So the Prime Minister's considering giving housing association tenants the right to buy again. Fair and good, well and good. And this is all about getting, he says, young people getting on the property ladder. My honest view about this is, surely we should have learned from this. You cannot sell off the housing stock without replacing it. You've got to have housing stock, particularly in places like London, for the working population.
Well, it's not just London, it's villages like where I live, where, you know, there's an agricultural economy and there's hidden poverty behind those thatched cottages and chocolate box views. They say there's a lot of deprivation. And yes, you'd think they would have learned, but clearly not. Because our village is like a village of two halves. It's the original village, and then it's in 1948, when people had the foresight in power, they built a council estate, big gardens, big houses, some of them 4 bedrooms, some little bungalows, for the people of the village who worked locally. And they were all sold off under Margaret Thatcher's scheme. And now none of the young people, my sons have sort of passed through it, but coming up as well, none of the young people can afford to live in the village. And it changes the whole socio-economics of the...
Rather than selling the stock off, they should be growing the stock,
They should keep it as a rental to let people, you know... I mean, I know you grew up in a council house, lots of my aunties had council houses, but maybe they should be used as to help people, and then after a certain time, you may be encouraged to move on and vacate it for the next generation, But
selling off is not the problem. It's a fast, quick solution.
If they can't rebuild, then they shouldn't be selling them off. And, you know, if they sell them off, then use that money, ring-fence it and build more houses.
Chris, let's look at this story that's on front. In amongst all the pictures of Princess Charlotte is this story about cancer referrals hitting a record. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, they're picking up on it, but there's obviously a huge backlog post-pandemic and the staff coming off the sort of war footing. Are they able to cope with it?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say it's obviously a bad thing. I mean, it's good that, you know, the 2.7 million are back on the queue, but it's a bad thing that they were not diagnosed for the last couple of years. Through the pandemic, and the idea is that, you know, every month that you go without being diagnosed is a 10% reduction in your chances of survival. So it is sad, you know. There's, but what I want to say is, you know, I've had experience with the NHS and cancer a couple of times now, and they have been brilliant with me. So while we are looking at this, and there's a lot of people down in the NHS, when they get it right, they get it right. You know, 10 years ago, I had another issue, and it was really awful, stuck in Chase Farm Hospital, out in the hallway, didn't see a doctor, then, you know, in front of everybody else, have something stuffed up my nose, and that was quite a traumatic experience. But my last 2 experiences, 2018 and last, they have been brilliant. So I think we've got to be really careful. You know, because it's easy to blast these figures and then see a negativity of an NHS. They're doing a great job. They work really, really hard. But, yes, there is this legacy of COVID, and there's this massive queue now waiting diagnosis, and can I hope and pray that the best outcomes come for the people.
There was a real worry, though, isn't there, with retaining staff? There's just this mass exodus of doctors and nurses, and, you know, as I was sort of alluding to, so many overworked and redirected during the pandemic. with this kind of huge in-tray for them, it's a concern, isn't it? Being able to hold on to doctors. I was speaking to an esophageal surgeon on Saturday. He's a cancer consultant. He was saying that he and his family were just exhausted after the pandemic and were thinking about going to Australia, which so many medics, it seems to be a path that a lot of people depart the NHS and head off to Australia. And
why are they going to work less in Australia?
Well, they obviously seem to think they can have a better quality of life. Whether or not they have
paid more, respected more,
and there's sunshine.
Well,
yeah, I read that a large number of GPs, I can't remember the figures, so I won't say it, are now working 5 half days, and it's becoming more the norm. So it's not just the number of people, it's the hours. I mean, I got bitten and I didn't see it. I never got to see a doctor in 5 weeks.
What'd you get bitten by?
Well, we think it was a tick, and and it came up in the traditional, the archetypal bullseye bite, round sort of bruised area, and then a big red rash round it. I could not get to see a doctor. I saw 5 different nurses at the GP's practice and at the walk-in centre at the hospital. I had to fight to get any antibiotics because they say start taking them because, otherwise it gets a grip. And it took 5 weeks to get the result of a blood test. So for 4 weeks I was then taking antibiotics, not knowing whether they were necessary or not. And then eventually I got a negative blood test, but I just couldn't see a doctor. I wasn't allowed.
Were you self-diagnosing? Were you on the computer?
I wasn't self-diagnosing. My friend saw it. She's not a medical trained. She said, Lyme disease looks like that bullseye. So, yes, we did look on the computer and saw the photographs. But when I went into the hospital walk-in centre, all the nurse did was go on the computer and look at the same NHS website and do exactly the same. It's impossible to see a doctor.
Well.
Yeah, but I'm here, so...
So what about, we're talking about doctors, Chris, in the Guardian front page, they're talking about dentists.
Yeah, 2,000 dentists are due to quit the NHS this year, and that's the NHS this year, forcing people then to have to go look for miles and miles to find a dentist or wait months, even years. And there was 2 extracts there of somebody who had to wait 2 years to find a dentist, and I couldn't imagine having a sore tooth and having to wait for 2 years to see your dentist. But yeah, 4 million Britons will have no access to NHS care, it's expected, because these 2,000 dentists are... I don't know where they've gone. I don't know if they've gone private. I don't know if they've left...
Australia.
Australia. But...
So they're saying that this will create what are called dental deserts. This is right across the country. After all of these people are thinking of quitting the NHS, going privately, leaving the profession altogether. So what do you do? How do you get a checkup? How do you get your problems fixed then?
Well, so you travel 20 miles and you keep on badgering the various NHS locations to get yourself on the list. I think the challenge is if you don't go for regular checkups, you get bumped off the list.
Yeah.
So if you want to see a dentist, stay online and go and have your checkups. Because once you're on the system, you're in the system. It's people like me who... I only ever go to the dentist when my tooth hurts. That's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But the result, I guess, again, is if all these dentists are leaving and then you've got an increased number of patients for the dentists who are left, then it makes it intolerable for them as well. I was reading that something like 2,000 patients per dentist at the moment. That will only go up.
No, 4,000.
4,000 was it?
No, you're right. Caseload of 2,000 patients. You're right.
So each dentist is a case of 2,000, as I say. So if 2,000 leave, that'll be 4 million people who will be left without a dentist, or have to go private.
Yeah.
Well, the horror stories, weren't there, during lockdowns of people getting pliers?
I
know. In desperation.
Oh, it's awful.
Well, if you have a toothache, you would do it.
Yeah, you would do it.
You wouldn't wait.
No, you do.
Umpteen months to get it sorted.
So, Partygate. Liz, Boris Johnson's allies have questioned whether it was appropriate for a lawyer who's criticised the Prime Minister to have advised the civil service investigation, in other words, the Sue Gray report, into the whole situation?
Well, another fascinating episode of a gripping saga. Yes, this advisor to Sue Gray is being alleged to be biased against a fair outcome for the Conservative government, for number 10, for the Prime Minister. I mean, how do you get somebody who's not got any political views at all or supports a political party? So that's the latest thing they're raking up. On the same story, I was really fascinated that this Durham miners thing with Keir Starmer, and now it's known Angela Rayner, and a couple of beers and some pizza. It was alleged that this delivery driver pitched up at the same place with curries for 20 people, including naans and poppadoms and rice. But it says in the story, quite straight-faced, the driver has now done a U-turn. It doesn't mean he didn't deliver the food. It means the evidence that he's given is backtracking on it now.
Guys, see you again in 40 minutes' time. That's Liz and Chris there. The time, 6:47. We're going to bring you an update on what's happening news-wise.
Ukraine's President Zelensky says the first group of the 100 civilians evacuated from Mariupol steelworks will arrive in Zaporizhia today. A spokesperson for the United Nations says Operation Safe Passage is being coordinated between Kyiv and Moscow.
As you've just been hearing, the NHS says a record-breaking 2.7 million people have been referred for cancer checks over the past year. The number of patients receiving treatment has risen by 2,000 since the start of the pandemic.
Lancashire police have confirmed that a body found in the forest of Bowland is that of 33-year-old mother of two, Katie Kenyon, who disappeared on April the 22nd. A post-mortem examination has found that head injuries caused her death.
New research warns that delays in passport processing could cost over £1 billion in cancelled trips this summer. The Centre for Economics and Business Research estimates only a 50% probability of a successful and timely passport renewal process.
And 3 new photographs have been released to mark Princess Charlotte's 7th birthday. The young royal is seen here with her arm around the family's pet Cocker Spaniel, Orla. And as usual, the photograph's been taken by her mother, the Duchess of Cambridge.
Orla's a nice name. I know a few Orlas.
Yeah, it's a very Irish name.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so. So what's your doggy called? Has it got a nice name? We have a plain Maggie, which is quite good. I like Maggie's good. Does what it says on the packet, really. Now it's time for somebody to ring your bell or knock your knocker on your doorstep.
Well, we love getting out and about, as you know, here on the programme. Today we are in South Wales. Our national reporter, Bradley Harris, is in Bridgend for us, as well as the seaside town of Porthcawl. A very good morning to you, Brad. You're back home, where you came from.
I am. It feels really surreal, actually, to be back where I was born. I've spent many years here. Lots of people know me from being from Manchester. I've spent many years there as well. But here I am, back in my birthplace in the town of Bridgend. It's got a population of around 150,000 people. I'm around 18 miles west from the capital, Cardiff, as well, so not too far from the city. And I'm here this morning to find out what people's plans are. Of course, Bank Holiday Monday. It's a little bit chilly this morning. The sun isn't out just yet. So I've come to this doorstep just to find out what people are up to. Ash, hello, good morning. You're with us on GB News, live on TV and on radio this morning for our listeners. First of all, lovely house. You actually bought this a few years ago. Just tell me, why did you decide to buy the house at that time as opposed to now? Because there's a 12.1% rise, but you bought it a few years ago, didn't you?
Well, we were in a good place at the time, really. Again, me and my fiancée at the time. Again, we're looking for a new home. Again, we left university, trying to find somewhere to live. And again, Bridgend's prices so much better than Cardiff at the time, from where we were living. And right place, right time, really.
Yeah, and you know, I'm from Bridgend, you're from Bridgend. How come then you didn't decide to choose a city in Cardiff, for example?
Again, realistically, we have a train station nearby. We can get in and commute. And again, prices really, and family here in Bridgend as well. So it's always nice to have family nearby. And again, prices being so much better, we can buy bigger really and be able to afford much more.
Brilliant. Well, do you mind if we just pop in and take a quick look around? We're going to come in and just, there we are, just keep the door open there for Kevin, who's on the camera. Now, I just want to chat to you, Ash, first of all, about what's going on the sofa, because we've got loads of kit here. We've got, it looks like overcoats, we've got bags, we've got some hats, and this weird kind of water contraption. What are you up to today?
We're going hiking on Pen y Fan today in the Brecon Beacons. Again, it's not the greatest of weather today, but again, even if it's a bit of rain, get outside, get some fresh air.
Yeah, it is quite chilly, and I've got to be honest, when I'm hiking, I've done a few hikes myself, I'm never this prepared, but you are going to do that this Bank Holiday Monday, and you're here with your wife, Lucy, as well, and you've also, are you going to be taking the cats? Because I'm told you do have a couple of cats as well.
Won't be taking the cats, again, they are indoor cats, again, they do enjoy some fresh air, but probably not with mountains.
Ah, brilliant. And I just want to ask you as well, just on the house, because I can see that you've got a little desk in the corner. I just want to ask you, first of all, are you a working from home man? Because you've got a little computer there.
Of course. More so at the beginning of lockdown, 100% working from home. Now we are partly in the office, partly at home, but majority at home at the moment.
Okay. Now, can I just ask you, because I did mention the cats. Where are they?
They're currently in the kitchen right now, or in the landing. They're wherever they want to be, really.
Can we please take a look? Go and grab them, Ash. Go and find one of the cats now. We're going to try and see one of Ashley's cats now. We're just going to go in there. But look at this. I'm never this prepared, Eamonn and Isabel, for a hike. They've got everything they need. The bags, clearly an F1 fan as well, because they've got some McLaren hats there. They've even got the boots as well. Don't look at my trainers, though. They are not as well equipped as what these guys are going to be wearing a little bit later. We're also going to be heading to Porthcawl in just under an hour's time, the seaside town there too. And this, look at this. Actually, what kind of breed is this?
Not 100% sure. He's a rescue. So both our cats are rescues from the same place. Hello there. He's a bit shy, aren't you?
Looks more awake than me and you this morning, Ash.
Yeah. Well, he woke me up quite early this morning. Again, really? Wanted some treats, wanted some love. Come on there, calm down. But yeah, he's a good boy.
Now, just tell me a bit just about Bridgend finally, because I just want to ask you about the area. You're a young guy, you bought a house here, you could have gone to somewhere like Swansea or Cardiff, 20 or 30 minutes away. You decided to stay here. There is something about Bridgend as a market town, known as Pen y Bont in Welsh, where you don't have to be in a city, because you're not too far away. You can get a house that has lots of room, lots of space at an affordable price. But that is crucial now, particularly with the cost of living crisis, things going up. Would you have bought a house now, knowing what you know now with the prices going up?
Again, currently with everything going up, it's an uncertainty, really. Again, we were really lucky at the time we decided to buy. Again, there were great deals going on, but currently, seeing how everything is right now, not too sure. And again, I wouldn't have this little guy right now if I waited any longer. So
I can't believe the way you just held the cat up like that then. You just literally just held it up like Simba or something.
Yeah.
Good to chat to you, Ash, and lovely to see your cat as well. Good luck with the hike. This is what we're going to be doing on GB News all this morning. We're heading to Porthcawl, the seaside town, a bit later. We've got some real treats and some hidden gems for you there, Eamonn and Isabel. So it's back to you, and I hope you like the cat.
Lovely. The things you find out nosing around people's houses. Thank you very much indeed.
I love a cat. I'm a cat person, I have to say. I'm a crazy cat lady. But
you were looking for dog names.
Well, yeah, you were just saying, we were talking about Orla, weren't we? Princess Charlotte's been pictured with her pet dog, and Eamonn was commenting on what a lovely name it was. Well, Nicola Martel's got in touch. She says they've called their whippets Noodles after Robert De Niro's character in Once Upon a Time in America, and Trotwood, which is apparently related to David Copperfield. This one's for you. Mr. Holmes says, John Swatkins. Hi, Mr. Holmes. My little dog is a Cairn Terrier called Fergie after Alex.
Very good, very good, very, very nice.
Well, there's more coming.
We were also talking about the sinking of the Belgrano, the warship, the Argentinian warship, 40 years on during the Falklands War. And Ned Kelly, former soldier, he's got in touch and he's saying, Eamonn, good morning. When you're in a war, you're in that war to win it, which is a fair point, Ned. John says, I don't understand raising this question again, the sinking of the Belgrano after 40 years. Why are we not similarly raising the way the Bismarck was sunk in that case? It was a war and decisions were made.
Talking about prisoners, we were discussing whether or not they should be doing work in the community. Steve says prisoners used to do work in the community, but at some stage it was deemed to be classed as slave labour, even though most prisoners that went out to work actually enjoyed it insofar as they could.
On this right to buy situation, this is a government proposal, Prime Minister considering giving housing association tenants the right to buy. And I was simply pointing out, have we learnt nothing from this from the first time around? A lot of people benefited from this. David saying, from what I know of the previous right to buy council housing, it resulted in a large number of people making a lot of money. I hope there's not going to be complaints of a housing shortage if they can afford to sell the existing houses off. But there will be, David, there will be. If you sell them and you don't replenish the stock, how do people who just can't afford to get on the housing ladder, how do people who need social housing to bring up their families, to stay within a reasonable distance of their employment, people who are teachers and work in the NHS and people who are firefighters and police officers, how do they afford to live within the confines of their working area?
A few of you getting in touch as well about this porn story, or Pestminster story as it's being dubbed by some. Alan says, putting the porn aside, the guy's now saying he was looking for farm machinery on his phone. Well, even that does not say much for his interest in the debate that was going on at the time either, now does it? And Aaron says, what would make things better in Parliament would be no mobile phones, a speaker who has the right to eject members who are rowdy and confrontational and disrespectful to ladies or gentlemen. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. We're here to listen to you. This is GB News, the People's News Channel. GB Views at gbnews.uk and at GB News. It's a pleasure to be waking you up on this Bank Holiday Monday.
Coming up, we're talking about all the big stories of the day, as well as the sport, and the day after Everton beat Chelsea at Goodison Park. Paul Coit will be here at about 20 past, so take a look at the back pages. We'll see you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Senior MPs call for a major overhaul of Westminster's working practices.
A very good morning to you. It is exactly 7 o'clock. It is Monday the 2nd of May Bank Holiday. Breakfast in GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
And happy Eid if you're celebrating a little bit later on today as well.
Though you can't get a taxi in the whole of London.
That is true.
Everybody's
Yeah,
off
they're
for
very
Eid.
busy.
Yeah.
Look, let's take a look at what's leading the news this morning. Radical action is needed to review working practices in Westminster. House of Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle has spoken out after concerns about sexism and inappropriate behaviour by politicians.
A record 2.7 million people referred for cancer checks over the last year. Figures from NHS England saw the numbers dramatically decline during the pandemic. More than 30,000 patients are still waiting to start treatment.
Civilian evacuations from the besieged city of Mariupol will resume this morning. Over the weekend, more than 100 people were allowed to leave the local steelworks.
And in the Premier League, Everton beat Chelsea yesterday at Goodison Park. Paul Coyte will be here to look at the big back page stories.
And you can join in any of our discussions. We are at the People's Channel. Email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
And thank you to Anne. Thank you very much to Anne, who's just been in touch. I am so happy to see Eamonn on this morning. No, he says Isabel too. Eamonn and Isabel this morning. Pleasant surprise, because I thought Bank Holiday Monday they would be off. Well, we're not. We're here, and we're with you until 9:30. Energy ministers from European Union countries hold emergency talks in Brussels today as the bloc strives for a united response to Moscow's demand that European buyers pay for Russian gas in rubles or face being cut off.
Russia halted gas supplies last week to Bulgaria and Poland after they refused to meet those demands. So what does the future of energy supply look like in Europe? Well, we're joined by Asger Thomasgaard from Norway. That is Europe's second largest gas supplier after Russia, and could soon, I suppose, Asger, become the biggest supplier in the long term.
Yeah, it seems like in the long term, if you look at natural gas supply from a security of supply perspective, it doesn't seem like Russian gas will be attractive at all over the next few years.
And does Norway play a role in all of this?
Well, what Norway is doing at the moment is to maximize its own natural gas production and exports, of course. So the Norwegian natural gas production and exports has been running at full speed and at full capacity over the last years, and is continuing to do so.
What way does this change the map of supply over Scandinavia, over Western Europe?
Yeah, so what we are seeing now is that the Norwegian gas is going into the markets like it used to, but during this autumn there will be a new pipeline open that goes to Denmark and Poland. It doesn't mean that there will be much more natural gas from Norway going into the market, but it means that there is more flexibility on where to route this natural gas. For example, the volumes going into Poland from Russia could be replaced by Norwegian gas. So even though the total volumes doesn't increase, the flexibility in terms of where to deliver the natural gas increases.
Okay, that's interesting. So can the total volumes be increased? I mean, is there a reason why, I mean, I presume Norway is exporting as much or at least using as much oil as it possibly can, or is there more that could be used by other parts of the EU?
No, so at this stage we are exporting at full capacity from Norway, and if you want to have higher exports, you will need to develop new production fields and also build new transportation capacity into the markets. And these are, of course, measures that would take some years to implement. And in the long run, you would also have to find more natural gas in order to be able to replace the Russian gas by Norwegian gas.
And how does all of this fit into the green plans that the world has mapped for itself?
I think we will see that this means that there will need to be an acceleration in the transition in Europe. I think Europe already had quite ambitious plans in terms of a zero-emission energy system, and I think this will obviously lead to an acceleration. And the reason is, I think that even if at the moment Russian gas is flowing into the markets, not as normal, but almost as normal, I think we will see that there is a less interest to focus on natural gas from Russia as a source into the national energy systems of European countries. And I think that will lead to an acceleration in phasing out
that's
for sure
good
Russian gas, but
that's
also
good. Sorry, I was just saying that's good to hear, but the thing is, here and now, is that people are facing huge increases in their energy bills, and the very fact that, you know, we can redistribute, be less reliant on Russia is fantastic news. But will it impact on prices, or am I just being greedy talking about that?
No, I think everyone is interested in that question, and I think what we can see as short-term measures, we will see that there is a higher focus on energy efficiency and trying to use energy more efficiently and to reduce demand, and also prices will go down then. And also in terms of installing heat pumps, so that again electricity used for heating could be more efficient. I think we will also see in the short run more imports of LNG from other parts of the world. But I'm afraid that if you look at the short run, it will be noticed in the prices of energy that the Russian gas is less reliable.
Asghar,
and I don't think that this is going to be solved in the very short run.
Okay, unfortunately. You just mentioned something there, and I was going to ask Isabel if she knew what this was, and then I thought, no, I'll ask you or ask both of you. Everybody always talks about these heat pump things. What is a heat pump?
Oh, don't ask me. I mean, it's something about getting the heat from underneath your own property, if I'm correct, from the ground. I mean, you're much more qualified to explain.
Yeah, do you happen to know? Do you know what a heat pump is, Asghar, and what it does?
Sure. Yeah, so you could take that an air-to-air heat pump would take heat from the outside air, even if it is colder outside than inside. You could take heat from the outside air and use that when heating up your home through electricity. So that would mean 1 kilowatt hour in would lead to 3 or 4 kilowatt hours out, and you could do this also by extracting heat from the ground, like you say, and you could also have water-to-air heat pumps and water-to-water heat pumps, and all of these technologies could be implemented pretty quickly over the next years in many homes.
Although they're expensive, aren't they? I mean, you say they could be quickly implemented, but they're controversial here in this country when they've been suggested.
Why are they controversial?
Well, because the suggestion is ordinary people have to pick up the bill to pay for this when they've got boilers or whatever else
The theory
already.
being, or the fact being, or the science being, Asghar, that the ground is hotter than the air. That bit I sort of understand. But how can you take cold air from the outside? You have to use some sort of fuel to heat that, surely, for it to be in the inside. You've lost me on that one.
Well, that's the fantastic principle of the heat pump, that even if it is colder outside than inside, there is still heat energy in the air, so that when you provide 1 kilowatt hour into the heat pump, it is able to extract 3 to 4 kilowatt hours under good conditions by utilizing this outside air. So the outside is getting a little bit colder, but outside doesn't notice much, but the inside is getting warmer, which is the main principle.
So it needs some energy input, but you export more.
Right.
Almost taking
Brilliantly explained. Brilliant. Tell me, but your point is.
I'm like the intermediary here.
The government. You're thinking the government should be saying, "We'll pay for this."
I don't have a view on it, but I know that there is controversy about whether it's insulation, whether it's heat pumps, about who's going to pay for it. Is it the taxpayer? Is it, ordinary bill payers? Who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? Probably it always comes down to the same thing as ordinary people. I just wanted to finish by asking Asghar about the situation in Poland and Bulgaria. Obviously, Russia having a fight with them over the payment of the energy that they're providing. But they've said that they've got reserves that will last, through at least the short term. Is that correct? And would your Baltic pipe be able to help Poland out come the autumn for that?
Yes, so what we heard from Polish officials is that the storages are quite a lot filled up, considering what time of year it is. And it's true that this new Baltic pipeline, as it's called, that will come into operation in October, will be able to provide flexibility into the Polish system in particular. For Bulgaria, I don't know if they are in the same good condition, but this is something that, of course, there is a well-functioning market for natural gas in Europe, so that there would be possibilities to provide some flexibility also to Bulgaria from other European countries.
Asghar Thomsgaard, thank you very much indeed. He is the director of the Norwegian Centre for Energy Transition Strategies. Very interesting talking to you live from Norway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're sitting hypothesising about heat pumps and trying to guess what they do and if they're effective and whatever. Do you have one? How much was it? What does it do for you? Has it turned your bills around? Is it more economical for you? Is it more expensive? It's certainly better for the environment, we understand.
It's the future,
join the
probably.
discussion, as the banner says, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. As a matter of fact, it'd be nice to tweet with a picture of your pump.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
And let us judge that.
Whilst you're appealing for views, I've got one view on this of my own, which is that I don't really understand why in this freezing cold country we spend so much of our energy making it cold with air conditioning. I just don't understand it. Turn the aircon off everywhere we go. I'm always cold everywhere I go. And I just don't understand why we waste the energy.
Is that not your problem rather than everybody else's? Because you're reptilian.
Well, that is true, yeah.
True. That could be. Do you know, there
I
was a
definitely do
series-
feel the cold, but I just don't understand why in the middle of winter, when it's 10 degrees, 2 degrees, minus 2 degrees, whatever it is, why we've got aircon on.
Because you've probably got so much heat on inside and you just need to have a nice balance. I like the idea of looking at the fire, which makes me feel cosy, but feeling the aircon.
I mean, honestly, this is why we have a crisis in the world with the climate.
But you
People
see-
like you burning energy with the window open.
But people like you,
Yeah.
do you remember
There we
the
go.
series that used to be on TV called V?
Mm-mm.
Well, it was about reptiles that came to Earth in human form. Right?
Are you calling me a snake?
They came when they were like you, except then when they put their tongue out, it was like V-shaped. And that's why they called it V.
I do have a forked tongue sometimes, as you know.
A foul tongue. Foul tongue.
Right, look, let's talk about someone else and their...
See, I nearly did that again. Do you know when you now make a sentence and I finish it by singing?
Oh, did you? What were you
Let's
about?
talk about... I can't go on about that.
Oh, right.
But anyway, do you not know
Well,
that song?
Yeah, I do know that song, yeah.
That's it.
Let's talk about Westminster is all you
Is
need
that
to
salt
say
and
now.
pepper?
Everybody knows what
Like
that
from
means.
Salt and pepper or something,
Yes,
yeah. Which is what we are going to
Yeah,
talk
exactly,
about.
yeah. So senior MPs and House of Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle have called for major changes now to Parliament's working practices following more allegations of misconduct.
Now, that's because that gentleman there, Conservative MP Neil Parish, resigned because he said he had been watching pornography twice in Parliament. Last week, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, spoke to Mr Parish before it was revealed that he was the MP at the centre of all of this.
And just very finally, Neil, while we've got you on these reports, and we know your chief whip is looking into them from a female minister about another Conservative frontbencher watching pornography on his phone. What's your reaction to that? I mean, it's pretty jaw-dropping, the suggestion that it's happened. I mean, frankly, whoever it is, I mean, surely they would have to have the whip removed, wouldn't they?
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
Is there a problem with the culture in Parliament, do you reckon? I mean, it's not just Conservative MPs, we should say, this is a cross-party issue, but there is a sense, I think, for people outside looking in, that there are just a whole range of stories, even this year, involving different MPs, that gives a sense that there's a cultural problem inside Parliament.
I think if you've got sort of 650 members of Parliament in what is, a very sort of very intense area, I mean, you are going to get people that step over the line. I mean, is it, I don't think there's necessarily a huge culture here, but I think it does have to be dealt with and dealt with seriously. And I think, that's what the whips will do in our whip's office.
Well, think of how embarrassing it must have been for him being asked those questions by Darren.
My heart bleeds. My heart bleeds for him. I'm more embarrassed for his wife.
Are you?
He had lunch with her just before that interview, according to the papers over the weekend. She works for him. She's in and around Westminster. And now everyone's talking about her husband's filthy habits. And she's got children. They've got grandchildren. The whole thing's just so embarrassing. And so beneath the office that he was in.
That's a very good way of putting it, Isabel, beneath the office. But you're right. I mean, when you think about it, if that was a school teacher, if that was the bank manager, if that was, who knows, it just should... If that was me sitting beside you... No, I mean, you would worry about how people would judge you, rightly so, for doing that, indulging that. But his argument is that he was looking up at... a tractor called the Dominator, right?
Oh, it's a combine
combine harvester. So he had Googled Dominator. And apparently, do you want me to Google Dominator now and see what comes up?
No, but I read a really funny, this is the line I want to read you. Not since the Wurzels tried to woo a young woman with their brand new combine harvester has farm machinery acquired such an amorous flavour. And another headline is over the weekend, the tractor fetish led him into muck of another kind. I mean, it is funny, but it's also not at the same time. So you have to make light of these things. It's just the tractor reference.
Do you feel ashamed of yourself now that you're laughing at that?
No, I'm not laughing at the act. I'm laughing at the ridiculousness of the tractor and all this. Anyway.
Dominator.
Oh, dear.
Dominator.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it. Well, no, I'll not encourage anything
No,
else.
let's move on.
Right, well, so meanwhile, 56 MPs have had allegations of sexual misconduct against them, referred to the Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme.
Yeah, the former leader of the House, Dame Andrea Leadsom, says that the scheme itself is not fit for purpose and more women would be at risk in the House until changes were made.
OK, now this comes after the Conservative Party inquiry into the sexist comments made by one of their MPs towards Angela Rayner, claimed that the Deputy Labour leader made the basic instinct comments herself, and that was big coverage in the newspapers yesterday. Earlier on this programme, we spoke to a lady called Alice Denby. Alice is the deputy editor of the online political website CAPEX about the culture within Parliament and the threat it poses to women.
I mean, obviously, it's very damaging, but I think I'd like to say, especially to any young women who are watching who might be interested in a career in politics, that Westminster can be a wonderful place to work. I worked for an MP for 5 years, and it's fantastic. I mean, the opportunities you get there can be amazing. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if I hadn't had that job. So I just want to say it's not the sort of hell cesspit that some might present it at. That said, there are these kind of power dynamics at play in this place that make it possible for this culture of bullying and sexual harassment to flourish. And, I mean, it's basically a Victorian system. It was only in 2018 that staff like me who worked for MPs has any kind of independent system of complaints if they had a problem with the MP that they worked for. So I think changes are needed, but I think we need to get a sense of proportion. You know, if you look at who's in the cabinet, you look at, you know, 2 of the great offices of state are held by women. It's not a place where women can't succeed.
No, but I mean, to say we need to get a sense of proportion, do you think it's acceptable for an MP to be watching porn in Parliament? And what message does that send to lots of people, not just parliamentarians, but to society at large? Young men growing up thinking, well, if that old boy is able to do that in one of the highest offices in the land, then I can certainly, you know, skip off school or whatever it might be. The message is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not appropriate in any workplace. I mean, Dominator or not, you can see how he might have made that mistake, but he said himself he went a second time, and God knows what he was thinking.
What do you think, Alice, the people, the voters in the red wall districts are thinking, bearing in mind these local elections looming and publicity like this, obviously affecting, I think, people's perceptions?
So what I've heard is that these kind of scandals are actually playing worse in the kind of more traditional, safe Tory seats in the south, whereas in the red wall, people are more likely to think that MPs and politicians are all the same. So I think with the local election results, it'll be interesting to see what happens geographically and how these things play out differently.
What about these 56 MPs who are under investigation, 3 of whom are in the cabinet? I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday was saying that, you know, there are a few bad apples within Parliament. How do you deal with those? How do you weed them out? And how do you make sure that this culture doesn't become the norm?
I think the first thing to say is that these complaints are coming forward now because, as I said, there was only the complaint system only existed since 2018. So I think what we're seeing is things working their way slowly through the system. But I think we certainly need that system to speed up. Andrea Leadsom, who did wonderful work on this, she set up the independence complaints system when she was leader of the House, has said that we need a complete overhaul. We need an independent HR system for MPs so that they can choose their researchers, but they don't employ them, they don't make those decisions about them. And I think that would be a good start.
7:20, latest news headlines are these. Breaking, Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has announced that he will stand down at the next election.
Yeah, last month, the former Justice Minister apologised after claiming that fellow MP Imran Ahmad Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice after being found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy.
The National Health Service says a record-breaking 2.7 million people have been referred for cancer checks over the past year. The number of patients receiving treatments risen by 2,000 since the start of the pandemic.
Lancashire Police have confirmed that a body found in the forest of Bowland is that of 33-year-old mother of two, Katie Kenyon, who disappeared on April the 22nd. A post-mortem examinations found that head injuries caused her death.
The Prime Minister is considering giving housing associations the right to buy with their tenants. The Telegraph reports that Boris Johnson has asked officials to draw up plans to help young people struggling to get on the property ladder in England.
And 3 new photographs have been released to mark Princess Charlotte's 7th birthday. The young royal is seen there with her arm around the family's pet Cocker Spaniel, Orla, in a photograph taken by the Duchess of Cambridge.
So their little doggie's called Orla. What's your little doggie called? What's the most unusual name we can come up with today? Tweet us at GB News.
Coming up, we'll have the latest on the relegation battle. I believe that should be in the Premier League, as Everton took a giant leap towards survival. But first of all, your bank holiday forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy to start with some fog. It'll turn brighter but also showery. Let's get the details. Starting off in the southwest, and this morning's cloud is set to linger until lunchtime for many, with a few spots of drizzly rain, feeling markedly warmer than yesterday though. It's also looking mostly cloudy across much of the southeast and around London. It'll be mostly dry and any early fog should have cleared. It's a different story for Wales. Here the cloud is going to break up, allowing for some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. It's looking similar across many parts of the West Midlands. It'll be brightest for more northern parts with more showers here. Meanwhile, further south the cloud is set to linger. Coastal parts of northeast England may have some lingering fog as we head through lunchtime and into this afternoon. Inland, things will be brighter, but a greater chance of some showers developing too. Whilst northern areas of Scotland are looking mostly fine with some lengthy bright periods, it will be more showery for central and southern parts, though still some sunny spells. There'll also be a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland. Here temperatures are set to reach highs of around 15 Celsius. There'll be further showers as we head through the afternoon, with the cloud in the south breaking up. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Backpage news now, doing that with Paul Coit, football dominating. Paul, Everton did themselves a world of good with that victory over Chelsea yesterday. Who would have thought?
I should say, and we were looking at thinking who was going to go down. It looked like with Burnley doing well, it looked like Everton were going to be in all sorts of trouble. Then playing Chelsea, and you're thinking, well, it's going to be surprised if they get anything there.
Well, I tell you, I think it's bad news. I think it's bad news for Leeds.
It's certainly bad news for Leeds. Is that who you reckon? Are you thinking Leeds at the moment?
I think
it's changing all the time.
Well, I think there's momentum with Burnley, and that's an amazing result for Everton. Plus, they've got a game in hand, so it leaves Leeds looking very precarious.
I think it does as well. I think now. I mean, I'm changing. It's the same as looking at the top of the league. It's looking at the top four. The bottom, I'm changing every 5 minutes. I'm changing and thinking, looking like Leeds at the moment. But the way all the results are going, you just can't call it right to the end.
How would you call it? You've got that fourth spot for Champions League between Arsenal and your team Spurs.
Yeah.
They've yet to meet each other for the second time.
That's right.
Will it depend on that, do you think?
I don't know whether it will. I like the idea that it will, because it's at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. This is the game that is being replayed, because if you remember a few months ago, it was going to be played, and then Arsenal had the situation where they had players that, I think because there were some that had COVID, there were some that were injured, and they managed to get the game cancelled. So now it looks like it could well be a decider.
I love how you got that. They managed to get the game cancelled.
Did that just slip out there, though?
They managed. Yeah.
They did happen to have had that happen.
Hey, meanwhile, Richarlison, the Everton player, and he's over all the back pages. He's taken the headlines really away from the result. Flare up, they're saying. Richarlison faces ban after hurling, they say, missile back into the crowd. It was a flare.
It's a heck of a picture, though, isn't it? With you seeing them with this flare. So the blue flare comes over.
Yeah.
He then, whether he throws it back into the crowd. But the words that we're hearing out of Everton Football Club, and see if you can get this, is that he was actually trying to throw it out of the ground. Now, I don't know.
There's some throw. Steve Austin, the $6 million man, couldn't have thrown that out of the ground.
And it would have been some throw if actually managed to get it over the top of the stand. So whether he was trying to do that, I don't know. But he's probably going to be in trouble because he's thrown it back again. A lit flare, which shouldn't have been there in the first place. It has been a great weekend of football. So Everton beating Chelsea, Arsenal beating West Ham, and then Spurs managing to beat Leicester as well.
Celtic knocking on the door of another Premiership win in Scotland.
Very close now, very close. It looked like if they were going to win, that was another Old Firm derby yesterday. Ended up 1-1, so there's nothing like an Old Firm derby, but even at the end of the season, when it looks like the actual Premiership is down to that, but 1-1, it looks like Celtic, and Ange Postecoglou, who's the Australian manager, he comes in and people are thinking, who is this guy? But he's got a great brand of football, done really well for Celtic, and so it looks like 6 points clear, 3 games to go. Looks like they're probably going to win the title.
The World Snooker Final, we're in the second day of that. So you've got Ronnie O'Sullivan. Who's he playing?
He's playing Judd Trump,
former
winner.
Right, yeah.
12-5 is at the moment.
Ronnie is amazing.
He is amazing. Incredible. He only needs 6 frames. So I'm thinking of the people that have bought tickets for the final session of the final at the Crucible. They're going to be the hottest tickets in town. Although at the moment, they're not looking quite so good because I don't even know whether it's actually going to reach the final session. He's running away with it. I'd say he's up to his old tricks, but Ronnie O'Sullivan did have a little problem with the referee. I don't know whether you saw that. Olivier Martel, Belgian referee, and he warned Ronnie. So Ronnie there hit a bad shot and then walks back to his seat. And I didn't see anything, but the referee walks over to us, has a quiet word and says, Ronnie, I didn't like what you did there. And he's going, well, what? So he said that he'd made, whether it be an obscene gesture, he's already done that once before. Obviously, I won't demonstrate it to you. But he got in trouble, and then he's going, well, you know, what did you see? There's 100 cameras around here. I didn't do anything. So I don't know what it's like when you get told off by your mum and you go, you did it, and then you go, well, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. But he got in a little trouble for that, and then he did have a go at the referee and said to him, don't start. He's actually said, don't start at me to the ref, and then the ref went back. So.
Well, it could do a lot to throw a player, I suppose, off their stride. And that's the referee's job. The referee's job is to get in there and do that. I used to host the World Snooker Finals.
Yes,
finals, not finals,
yeah.
final.
Yeah.
In Sheffield. It's an amazing atmosphere.
The legendary Crucible. I mean, it's one of the great homes of sport, isn't it? Because the snooker, they were saying about whether they move it away from the Crucible, which they couldn't do. But I think they're talking about making it bigger because in the grand scheme of things, I think it holds about 900 people. But for a world championship, it's not really that many, is it?
Aye. Great thing for Sheffield, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Shame for them to lose that.
Oh, yeah, they'll still be there. They'll stay there.
What
and I
else have
should
you got?
mention, though, that your team, Manchester United, I don't know whether you don't want to mention it, but you are playing tonight,
We're playing
final
Brentford
game at Old
tonight.
Trafford of the season.
Yeah.
Is there going to be they usually have the lap of honour, although they tend to call it the lap of appreciation these days, which I think you probably...
Or the walk of shame.
or the walk of shame, which I don't know whether anybody's actually going to stick around and stand there and slow hand clap.
Well, you got to support your team. You got to do that, and you can only hope that the summer new manager, transfer window, that things will turn around. But there's got to be major surgery there.
Yeah, it has to be.
All good players on paper, all good players. They just can't work together as a team. That's
Should
it.
be. Eric Ten Hag, it's a big job for him to do.
Emma Raducanu doing well in Madrid.
Yeah, she's doing OK in Madrid, playing on clay. Again, I don't want to put too much pressure on her because it seems that we're waiting for another big win after the US Open.
No, we're just pleased for her, I suppose.
Yeah, we are pleased for her. But Andy Murray's there as well. He's playing in Madrid and plays Dominic Thiem today. He's there as a wild card. But he's been speaking about the LTA and banning Russian and Belarusian players. He said he's not supportive of players being banned. It's that again because they're banned from Wimbledon, but says there's no right answer. So he's given, I think he said it the right way because it is a really difficult thing to try and say this is the right way, this is the wrong way. Whereas you've got Andrei Rublev saying it's complete discrimination against Russian players and they should be allowed to play, whereas it's a very fine line to be able to decide what's the right thing to do.
So, big day of bank holiday sport. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming in as well. 32 minutes past 7. Coming up, we're going to have the biggest stories from the papers. Who's doing that, Isabel?
Yeah, we've got Liz Kershaw back and Chris Akabusi for that, so we'll see you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest news this hour. It's 7:35 and breaking news this hour. Conservative MP Kristen Blunt has announced that he'll stand down at the next election. Last month, the former Justice Minister apologised after claiming that fellow MP Imran Ahmad Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice after being found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy.
Ukraine's President Zelensky says the first group of 100 civilian evacuated from Mariupol's steelworks will arrive in Zaporizhia today. A spokesperson for the United Nations says Operation Safe Passage is being coordinated between Kyiv and Moscow.
Magistrates have had their sentencing powers doubled to help tackle the courts backlog. They'll now be able to hand out jail terms of up to a year for a single offence. That's twice as long as the previous maximum. The move's been criticised as counterproductive by lawyers. Lots of views coming in on that. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
New research warns that delays in passport processing could cost over £1 billion in cancelled trips over the summer. The Centre for Economic and Business Research estimates that only a 50% probability of a passport renewal process for travellers.
Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi will write to schools to urge them to use the government's flagship national tutoring programme. Schools and tuition providers have previously reported problems with the online portal, describing it as dysfunctional.
And you're looking at one of 3 new photographs which have been released to mark Princess Charlotte's 7th birthday.
Yeah, the young royal seen there with her arm around the family's pet cocker spaniel, Orla, in a photograph taken by the Duchess of Cambridge.
And goodness me, you love your doggies.
Oh my gosh, the inbox. I actually can't keep up with the huge numbers of dog pictures, dog names, dog stories. Philip Moore has got in touch to say, Isabel and Eamonn, lots of giggles about tractors. Don't know what you're talking about, Philip. But now to the serious bit. My dog has an illustrious name from a famous guy, Chio no Fuji, Chio for short. He's a smart Jack Russell and is black and white and looks like a miniature Frisian cow. Julia Henson sent a picture of her dog saying, our gorgeous boy is a cocker called Jarvis. Yeah, I know, you can see the picture, but I can't see the name on that one, so I can't read that one. That was from Paul Kite, who sent a lovely picture.
Well, you know, my all-time hero, John Wayne, had a dog in 2 films, one of which was Hondo. And do you know what he called the dog?
What? Hondo?
Dog. Oh. He called it Dog.
I've always thought I'd quite like to call my dog Badger. I don't know why. I just sometimes think it's quite fun to call an animal a different animal's name, like squirrel and badger.
But an identity complex.
But I don't have a dog, so
well,
maybe
let's whistle
day.
And get these 2 dogs to go through the papers now. Dog, we got Chris Akabusi and Liz Kershaw.
I used to call my dogs dogs.
Did you?
I had 3 dogs. I mean,
that's a good name.
Shabba and Zen, that's what their names were.
Nice.
But I never like, dog!
Yeah.
We had and he looked up to me.
They knew the boss was in the room.
Dog!
Dog.
What are you doing?
Dog. There
we
we
had
go.
a cat called Philip.
I like that.
Philip the cat.
Because I said to Sam, who was about 4, what should we call it then? He said, and it was a girl. He goes, Philip. And that was...
Phyllis.
Philip. And then she had kittens, and I said, you can keep 1 kitten. What should we call this kitten? He said, Puss.
Aww.
So I had Philip and Puss.
I think there's a plethora of Boris's out there as well, isn't there? Boris's out there.
I quite like the name Horace for a cat.
Horace.
Anyway,
yeah.
we digress.
Well, it's like children. Whatever you call them, they become it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? You both want to talk about those Princess Charlotte pictures over all the papers.
Well, I just want to say, it makes me laugh when Stephen Dixon goes, oh, I do like to play with me little Timmy.
Oh, could have been worse. Could have been worse.
Leave it.
So, we're all happy.
Something in the air today. There's something in the air today. Everyone's in a naughty bank holiday mood. You're going to get the giggles. Everyone's going to
Well, it's a holiday. Go on. Sorry.
With the elections, is there a pact, Liz, between Labour and the Lib Dems?
Well, it would seem so. For instance, in the South West, the Conservatives have identified that Labour is only putting up candidates in 66% of the seats. And as we know, the Lib Dems are very strong in the South West. They're the main opposition. Labour doesn't really stand a chance. So it seems like, and this is what Oliver Dowden, the chairman of the Conservative Party, is claiming, Keir Starmer's denying it, that they've said, right, you could beat the Tories in the South West, so we'll stand back and we won't put up candidates. And it's the reverse in the north of the situation. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've heard it discussed because I know loads of local councillors and politicians. But where I live, our MP, for example, has got a 30-odd thousand majority. And quite often we might get a Lib Dem standing against in a general election. But the Labour Party just doesn't seem to bother. And then we were sitting there this week saying, have we got local council elections on Thursday? And the reason we're not sure is because nobody bothers to leaflet us. Nobody bothers to come knocking on the door or campaign because it's just such a shoo-in for the Tories.
Right.
So in a way, I think it's disgusting if this is actively being done because it's just running down democracy.
Yeah.
If people don't have a choice of who to vote for. On the other hand, would you want to stand if you knew because I've helped in elections leafleting since I was a kid, and it's hard work. Would you want to stand if you knew A, you hadn't got a chance, B, you're going to have to invest all those hours in it, and C, you're going to have to pay £1,000, it might be more now, deposit, which you might as well just write off. Perhaps they should.
I think they should.
Scrap the deposits where it's really tough and encourage more people to stand.
Yeah, in the margin.
Yes, no, I just wanted to say, no, I think you should. I mean, I was, where I have to vote in Salisbury, John Burker was the
Speaker
of the House. And so there were a couple of times when it came when I couldn't vote for who I wanted to vote for because he wasn't standing. And the Conservatives won, but nonetheless, it was quite an affront to know that actually you had no vote. Well, you did have a vote, you had options, but the options that were there were not where I wanted to go. So I do think that there's, if we are in this democracy, and I understand why there are times these pacts go, but it is actually taking something away from the electorate.
Yeah.
OK. Let's go to the supermarket now, and we want to talk about the cost of living crisis. This is in the Mail, Chris, page 13. Price of chicken set to rival beef.
Yeah. So at the moment, the chicken is like a third of the price of beef. But due to the conflict that's going on at the moment, the war, Ukraine-Russian war, a lot of our seed and grains come from that locality. It's not making it to the UK. The seeds and grains are meant to feed, or we use them to feed the chickens, and so the price rises are rising exponentially. So expecting that to be passed on to us when it comes to buying our chickens. And what I really liked about this article, the reason I chose this and not the front page one, was the little cartoon by Pew, who a couple, it's their anniversary, massive anniversary, and he goes, happy anniversary, and there's a chicken nugget but posted as their anniversary gift to show that, it is going to be quite pricey to be afford to eat out.
Back in the day, I mean, chickens were really a luxury. when I was a kid, we had a handful of gravel. But a proper chicken was something special. Now it's like an everyday meal, and it has been. And you could get a boiling fowl, some old scraggy old bird, and my grandma used to get one and chop its head off and gut it and boil it in a pan and make lots of different meals. So chickens become.
Yes.
And I fear we might be going back to the days when it's, we've got a chicken today.
But the knock-on, sorry, I was just going to say, the knock-on of seeing the price of chicken going up is that welfare will probably go down. Over the years, chicken welfare has become such a big issue, hasn't it? I always feel guilty if I buy non-free range because you hear so much about the awful conditions of battery chickens, and obviously that's done to drive down prices. But if it's becoming more and more expensive to rear chicken, they're going to try and make cuts where they can, and you just suspect it will be welfare that's...
Well, you get a free-range chicken in Marks and Spencer's now, already for like £8.
Yeah.
And you can get a chicken the same size at Aldi for £3.50.
But listen, you've got a whole generation now reared on chicken shops, takeaway chicken. The
deep
KFCs,
fried,
deep fried, the Nando's, the whatever. That's going to be a shock.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember also when, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was all that controversy over the quality of meat that they were putting in to subsidise the the real meat.
Yeah, they were putting in horse meat and...
Well, that's what I'm trying. Horse meats and dogs and all sorts in there.
What do you think they're going to do? Put in parrot meat or thrush meat or...
Well, but what they are going to do, they're going to have to bolster that meat with all sorts of things that you
fill it out.
I wonder how much of a chicken nugget is actually chicken.
Well, it is, but it's a machine extracted facial,
crushed bones and beef.
We've got some wood pigeons that are this big. Touching up our garden.
Okay.
I wonder what they're like.
They're probably delicious if they're country wood pigeons.
Yes, very good shout, Because like pheasant and all that sort of stuff, too rich for me,
roadkill. You're going to be picking up that badger on the A5 on the way home, Chris.
Let's probe you about porn, Liz. This is the Sun, front page of the Sun today.
Well, you've rather taken the steam out of this. Isabel's already had a cackle about this one.
People just waking up.
Well, I saw this on the news last night and I thought, I'm a reasonable person.
Well, just to let people see the headline, front page of the Sun here.
Yes.
So he wanted a dominator. The porn MP, he was not necessarily looking at porn. He was looking for a combine harvester that was called a dominator.
Yeah.
And when he put that into a search engine, what did he get, Isabel? What did he get?
He got porn, which he didn't click off very quickly by all accounts. But anyway,
and there was a helpful picture in one of the papers which showed a picture of a tractor and a picture of somebody like this in latex and rubber. So the guy made an easy mistake, and then he went, that's not a combine harvester. oh, I see what that is. The thing is, he has admitted that he went back to it again deliberately. But I actually, there was an MP, I don't know if I can name names, but I was on the public debate, who was exposed as, that's not a pun, as his girlfriend was a dominatrix and her cellar was full of professional equipment, and he claimed he didn't know. Oh. And I went to Commons once to brief an MP, and he spent his whole time looking at my chest like this.
No.
I don't.
You don't think it's a new problem? Because there's been
I've had some wild nights in that strangest bar. I've witnessed all sorts of stuff and been subjected to all sorts of stuff. Yeah. I think it's because they're all like. There's celebrities in big fish in little ponds, in their constituencies, and then they're all pent up together and they don't see their partners all week. And I'm not just describing this to the men. I think that would be sexist. And then they work long hours, and then they go in. They've got subsidised booze. They're all on the terrace. They've got people being sycophantic. They're whooping it up. It's a recipe.
It is, but can I just point out, Neil Parish's wife works for him, and she's seen around Parliament all the time with him. In fact, had lunch with him just before he did that now infamous GB News interview this week. So it's not like he's, not estranged from his family. But anyway,
no, but he wasn't. He was only looking in the shop window.
Yeah,
he didn't get. It
Okay.
wasn't.
Well, guys, we've got. You go off and enter your search engines, whatever you're going to do. Thank you very much indeed, Elizabeth and Chris, and they're going to be back in 40 minutes' time. We break off because today is the start of National Gardening Week, and if you're looking to get out with some green fingers, this may be the best time.
Yeah, but for those with limited space, how can they get the best out of their small pots and plants? Well, we're joined by horticulture enthusiast Michael Perry to get some top tips. Very warm welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us this morning. I have to say, I don't know if it's my age, I'm turning 40 this year. I'm really into my garden now. It's a very urban space. There's no grass or anything. But just yesterday, my clematis flowered, and it was genuine excitement seeing my clematis coming out. And my wisteria hasn't flowered yet, and I've got a bit of wisteria hysteria, because I see everyone else's wisteria flower. I've got envy. But
your point is what?
I don't really know. My point is that I'm excited
You're blooming all over.
I'm excited about this segment. And how can we get other people enthusiastic about their urban spaces?
Well, it sounds like you already know quite a bit, which is great. I have to say, I'm working here in a really, really small garden. And when I first arrived, I was like, I really want a bigger garden. But now I wouldn't want a big garden, because actually the smaller space is easier to work with. And same as you, Isabel, I haven't got a lawn at all. And sometimes people are shocked by that. But of course, lawns take a lot of care. We're going into No Mow May as well, where you're encouraged to keep your lawns longer, because of course, a trimmed lawn is not good for any pollinators. So I actually opted for polished concrete and surrounded it with beds of plants. And I've got wildlife attracting plants there. And I think I've done quite a nice job with the space because I've almost divided it into 2 rooms as well and managed to make it look a lot bigger, because if you saw it before, it was just a lawn in the center and it didn't even feel cozy. So there's a lot you can do in a small space, but you just need to add height here and there, kind of plant quite densely as well, which really helps. So yeah, I'm quite proud of what I managed to achieve in a space that is probably like a London-sized garden, so really quite urban and compact.
Michael, it's spooky that we're talking to you today, because yesterday afternoon I looked out through my my back windows onto my garden, which is, it's big but not huge that you could make it into a wild area. You sort of, that area that sort of, you're used to making it look neat, and that's the worst of all worlds. And I think and I sense that there's going to be a reimagination of how people in Britain see their gardens over the next 10 years or so. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think for many years we've looked at a garden, and certainly my parents' generation, we've looked to try and tame a garden and make it behave. But actually, we need to let the garden do kind of what it wants and just manage it very quietly and carefully, and make sure there are plants there for pollinators. You know, in my garden, I just did a shoot for a magazine a couple of weeks ago, and I really had this internal kind of wrestling. Do I remove the nettles? Because I actually have nettles amongst my tulips. And I quite like that juxtaposition of, you know, what we see as a weed alongside an acceptable plant. But I think as we go forward, you know, weeds will become, you know, like wild plants that we have in our gardens, and we will work with those with the existing plants we have. And last weekend it was National Dandelion Day as well, and they are great for pollinators. They're cheerful plants. It just takes a real mindset change to kind of accept, you know, acceptable plants that used to be weeds. And so many of those weeds have got uses in the kitchen. We can eat them as well. So I think the days of trying to manage a garden are kind of a little bit, well, trying to tame a garden are over. We're now kind of working with what the garden wants to do. And of course, at the same time, you've then got a better ecosystem. And the more hedgehogs you have, the more birds you have, the less slugs and snails
and
you
the
have.
less
You
work,
won't need
the
all of
less
those chemicals
toil
in your
and
garden
trouble
shed.
and mowing the lawn you've got to do as well, and trimming the hedge and all that sort of thing. So if people are out and about today and they're off to the garden centre, is there anything today they should be doing or they could be planting to give themselves a very, very pretty and useful garden over the next few weeks?
Well, what I tend to plant, and you've seen from my garden, I've planted a lot of plants in a small space, and I've gone for a lot of ground cover plants. So plants that kind of hug the soil. They've got big leaves as well, because the more you cover the soil, the more you keep the moisture locked in, because of course, bare soil is not only unattractive, but it also means the water evaporates. And of course, the weeds can establish themselves in those spaces when you haven't got as many plants. So I would encourage people to really overplant, you know, plant more than fits into the garden, because you can always unplant at a later stage. In terms of house plants, you know, you can get into house plants at any time, and I've got quite a few to show you here. So cacti and succulents, great for beginners because they don't need any water. They're storing all of their own. There's also terrariums you can use, but liquid terrariums, one of the next big trends. So these are actually suspended in an oil solution. You can make these yourself at home. And also I want to show you a bit of kind of gardening indoors with multi-planting containers. So you can see if you haven't got much space indoors, perhaps you only want one plant that you're going to care for, you can actually multi-plant those the similar way to what you would outside on a patio as well. So, and one last thing I want to show you about herbs, actually. You know, when you go along to the supermarket and you buy those herb packs, they always dry out very quickly because they tend to be in a compost mixed up with a bit of glue to keep all the soil in place. But this is one of the best pots that I found to keep those well watered, because it actually has a terracotta base, and that continually brings up the water to the herbs. So if you do want to grow those long term and keep buying them from the supermarket, these work really, really well. Self-watering pots, and certainly self-watering takes away that panic of, you know, growing house plants and I can't go away for a holiday or a weekend. You can with self-watering pots.
I'm that person that overwaters to overcompensate and then drowns them, and then I starve them of water. Yeah, it's terrible. I'm only just getting the hang of it. Any absolute no-nos, and one thing we've learnt from experience, because we live on a railway line, so we wanted to try and block out the train track, so we planted a few bits of bamboo. And then the bamboo has basically, underneath the soil, completely taken over. So we can't dig anything. And I wanted to put some rhododendrons in. We couldn't get into the soil because it's all
planted in plastic.
You should only put it in buckets.
Yeah.
So any other no-nos?
Invasive.
It's awful. Regret that.
Well, it can be, but you've got to be careful with bamboo because there's a few different species. There are some that are more clump forming than spreading. So make sure when you go along to the nursery or the garden centre, actually ask them which genus and family of bamboo it is, because there are some that won't spread in that way and they don't have runners, so it could be possible. But one final thing
Stop you spreading, my friend. We're out of time. We're out of time.
Don't be too shy to use faux plants in the garden as well, because they can work nicely alongside real plants and kind of give that lovely effect.
Thanks for that advice, Michael.
Doesn't want to care.
Michael is, as you will.
Some faux with the real.
Thank you.
He doesn't hear me. Michael is Mr. Plant Geek there, Michael Perry. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. Thank you. And if I had time, I'd talk about the magic of a robot lawnmower.
Oh, yeah, they're amazing.
They are
I've
incredible.
heard about those. Yeah.
It's like witchcraft.
Yeah, amazing.
It's amazing. They have a little life of their own when they do what they
there.
do. Anyway.
We're going to take a break. Who's going?
Let's have a look at the weather.
OK.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy to start with some fog. It'll turn brighter but also showery. Let's get the details. Starting off in the southwest, and this morning's cloud is set to linger until lunchtime for many, with a few spots of drizzly rain, feeling markedly warmer than yesterday though. It's also looking mostly cloudy across much of the southeast and around London. It'll be mostly dry and any early fog should have cleared. It's a different story for Wales. Here the cloud is going to break up, allowing for some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. It's looking similar across many parts of the West Midlands. It'll be brightest for more northern parts with more showers here. Meanwhile, further south the cloud is set to linger. Coastal parts of northeast England may have some lingering fog as we head through lunchtime and into this afternoon. Inland, things will be brighter, but a greater chance of some showers developing too. Whilst northern areas of Scotland are looking mostly fine with some lengthy bright periods, it will be more showery for central and southern parts, though still some sunny spells. There'll also be a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland. Here temperatures are set to reach highs of around 15 Celsius. There'll be further showers as we head through the afternoon, with the cloud in the south breaking up. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Senior MPs call for a major overhaul of Westminster's working practices.
Good morning, it is 8 o'clock on Monday the 2nd of May. It is a bank holiday. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Happy Eid if you're celebrating that today. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Radical action is needed to review working practices in Westminster. The House of Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has spoken after concerns about sexism and inappropriate behaviour by politicians.
Civilian evacuations from the besieged city of Mariupol will resume this morning. Over the weekend, more than 100 people were allowed to leave the steelworks.
And after an 11-day pause, more than 200 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday. With weather conditions improving, more are expected today. And GB News presenter Nigel Farage is out in the Channel for us this morning.
And also out and about, our reporter Bradley Harris on your doorsteps in Bridgend and Porthcawl in South Wales. Porthcawl is a popular holiday resort and is one of the largest caravan parks in the whole of Europe.
So will Bradley be knocking on your door this morning? Stay tuned to find out.
And you've been very good talking to us this morning on this May Day bank holiday. I hope you will be enjoying it if you don't have to go to work or got some other plans, but you can join in any of the discussions we have. You can say hello at gbviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News as well. Senior MPs and the House Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, have called for major changes to Parliament's working practices following more allegations of misconduct.
Well, on Saturday, the Conservative MP Neil Parish resigned after admitting he'd watched pornography twice in Parliament.
And 56 MPs have had allegations of sexual misconduct against them referred to the Independent Complaints and Grievance scheme.
Well, the former leader of the House, Dame Andrea Leadsom, says that the scheme itself is not fit for purpose and more women would be at risk in the House until changes were made.
Now, this comes after the Conservative Party inquiry into the sexist comments made by one of its MPs towards Angela Rayner, which claimed that the Deputy Labour leader made the basic instinct comments herself.
Well, for the latest on the suggestions of reform is our political correspondent Tom Harwood, who joins us in the studio this bank holiday. Good to see you, Tom. So what are these suggestions then, and will they be able to change, all the headlines, things like Westminster, hugely damaging for the reputation of Parliament, isn't it?
Certainly hugely damaging, and these stories have seemed to have reached a fever pitch in the last 7 days. The solutions, the proposed solutions, are not new, however. There's a lot of focus on the drinking culture in Westminster, the idea that it should be more of a dry workplace, the idea that there should be proper HR systems, because, of course, the way that staff are currently employed, it's like there are 650 individual businesses all working under the same roof because MPs employ their own staff out of their expenses budgets. This is why sometimes MPs' expenses look like they run into hundreds of thousands of pounds. Actually, they're just employing people to work as caseworkers or researchers for them out of that. So yes, there are lots of proposals for reform, but also, starting now, there's a bit of pushback on, is this culture really so uniquely different from anywhere else in the country? Because the Independent Complaints and Grievance scheme emailed MPs on Friday, and I can reveal that actually it's not 56 MPs that are under investigation. Last year there were 15, and they say that this year it's a similar trend. So we're expecting around 15 MPs being investigated under that scheme. And this is a new scheme, of course, because the last wave of Westminster allegations that came around in 2016, 2017 started and instigated all of these new independent complaints processes managed by the House. So in many ways, there's a bit of a campaign now kicking up to say, use these new processes that were instituted not so long ago. Some people are saying that actually a lot of these processes aren't being followed in the way that they've been designed. They're very new, that takes time to filter through the organisation. But ultimately also, we're seeing all of these different stories, some of them ranging from someone sort of making a joke about flashing legs on the House of Commons and others ranging to some things that are really quite more concerning, involving sexual assault. I think sometimes a lot of these different issues can all be bundled together and seem like they're all as serious as each other. And there really is a sliding scale.
OK, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you. The time now is 5 minutes past 8. A very good morning to you on this Bank Holiday Monday. It's time for us to go out and about and be on your doorstep. So today, Bradley Harris has been in South Wales, and we've seen a lot of what is going on. So let's go to him, and he's either in Bridgend or Porthcawl, we believe. Now, where are you, Brad?
Oh, I can see some water behind him. I'm in Porthcawl. Yeah, that's right. The water is behind me. I've, spent all my childhood near Porthcawl, and I've never come to where I'm standing now, which I think, quite frankly, is a hidden gem in Porthcawl. Behind me, of course, very iconic view. That is the lighthouse and Porthcawl Pier. Often photographers are actually around here, not taking pictures of me, obviously, taking pictures of the waves that are crashing up this pier. There's scaffolding along it at the minute because there's a lot of investment going on here in Porthcawl, but the pictures that people get here of the waves are now on postcards here in the town. That's one iconic picture of the waves crashing up there. But I'm standing up high on the watchtower, and I'm going to knock on the door here to chat to Phil, because this is amazing where I am. I'm with Phil Stiles, who's the station manager of the National Coast Watch Institution.
Morning.
Morning to you. Can I just pop inside? For those listening on radio, we're going inside a watchtower right now, and there's a fantastic view of the sea behind us. It is quite cramped. It's quite cosy in here, so we're going to keep quite close. But I want to ask you, Phil, what is the purpose of the National Coast Watch Institution then? What's your role?
Okay, National Coast Watch Institution was set up in 1994, and we maintain a visual watch around the coastline of the UK to help with the preservation of life and keep people safe along the coastline and out at sea.
Right, wow, and today's Bank Holiday Monday. It looks pretty calm out there, but how many incidents have you had in the past, say 10 or so years, and how big have these incidents been?
Well, this station's been open 5 years, and we're a very busy station. We've averaged around about 60 incidents per year. That covers everything from paddleboarders, surfers, swimmers, small boats, everything you could think of that happens at sea happens around Porthcawl.
Wow. And can I just say, the technology in here is absolutely incredible, Phil. We've got screens up here. We've got this ginormous set of binoculars. Do you mind if I just have a quick look? Let's see what I can see. What kind of binocular is this, Phil?
That's a high-power focused binocular. On a good day, when it's not so hazy, you can see up to 14 miles across to the North Devon coastline.
Wow. I can see a seagull. I can't see any surfers or any incidents yet, Phil.
No, haze is quite calm today, and it's very hazy, so you haven't got such a good visibility today.
Yeah, now this is a very traditional way of looking for an incident, but actually you've got a lot of modern technology as well. Just talk me through some of the screens and tech that you've got
Right,
here.
okay. Well, we're very fortunate here. We've got 5 cameras set up along the coastline, so you can see the monitors here. So this one is up to the west of us at West Bay. We have a camera here looking over the town beach, and then the other 3 cameras carry on further east over to Ardmore by Sea. So we cover up to 15 miles of coastline along here, which is why we're very busy.
Yeah, very busy. And there's one camera that is looking at us right now here in Porthcawl. You're the station manager, and do you know what surprised me about this place? It's run by volunteers.
Totally run by volunteers. The whole charity is run on a volunteer basis. We have just over 2,500 volunteers, and currently we have 58 stations around the coastline. All volunteers, all a charity, all funded by donations from the community.
Absolutely incredible. I'm going to be on my best behaviour later on, because I know if I am going to be heading out there, you're going to be watching me to make sure that I'm on my best behaviour. Good to chat to you, Phil. Absolute pleasure. And what a brilliant hidden gem, Eamonn and Isabel. Like I said, I've been here throughout my entire childhood, never come inside the National Coast Watch Institution. What a moment.
What a moment. Lovely that we captured that on camera, Bradley. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that little hidden gem to us as well. Now, 100 civilians were evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks region in Mariupol in Ukraine, controlled territory of Saturday, but it's feared many remain trapped in the area. But the Russian occupation is very much felt in the Kherson region, where the ruble is to be introduced from today. Well, Yevgen Matyashenko joins us now to tell us more. And Yevgen, let's start with the really positive news over the course of yesterday that those first civilians, women and children, were successfully evacuated out of the steelworks, and we believe President Zelensky was saying from 8 o'clock this morning that should resume again today.
Yeah, sure. The effort should resume today. I think it has already started, and we believe more civilians will be evacuated to the Ukrainian-controlled territory. Right.
Have we heard any updates from those who were successfully evacuated yesterday about the conditions that they were living in? Because we heard testimony over the weekend via Elon Musk's Starlink satellites of what was going on, but I wondered if we've heard any more from them in the last 24 hours.
We haven't heard any more from them since they left the area, but as we saw the videos from the site where they were sheltering, in the Azovstal, and as they were heading out of there, they told us that they had really grave conditions staying in there. They were forced to stay there under constant shelling and bombardment by Russian forces. That was hell, actually. There were children there, there were women there, there were the elderly. So those images were just horrific for anyone in Ukraine, I believe, beyond too.
And what sort of percentage of the people who are trapped in there now then have been able to get out, and how many are expected to escape? I mean, we're not talking about any of the Ukrainian forces. We are just talking about civilians, aren't we?
We were talking about hundreds of civilians, that what we were told by the military. I don't have the exact number for you, unfortunately, but I believe most of them, I believe even all of them, will be evacuated in the course of these days. That's what we all believe in.
Kherson, over the weekend, switching to the use of the ruble, obviously under Russian occupation. How significant a moment is this? And, what does it tell us, really, about what the Kremlin's intentions are?
The Kremlin's intentions in Kherson region in Ukraine south were initially a bit different, I believe. They were expecting a welcome, so I believe they had wrong intelligence about the moods in the region. They believed that people would really welcome them and help them establish the so-called People's Republic or whatever. But it turned out, as we see from the footage from the central square of the city of Kherson, that people actually, they are mad at the occupiers. They see what they are being shown on TV, because Russian TV has been turned on for them. They see that propaganda is telling them that the local population is welcoming the invaders, but they see that they're not doing what they're told they're doing. They are protesting, they're rallying against the occupiers, and the ruble territory, the ruble thing, is really a propaganda stunt. People in the area, they're fleeing, the one who can. As I was told by a local resident, a woman who managed to flee the region, she said starting April 24th, the evacuation of civilians was pretty much halted by the invasion forces. People at the checkpoints are told to just turn around and go back. They're told, let your army stop bombing us, stop shelling us, and then we will let you go. So they're sort of trying to use people as human shield.
Awful situation. Yevgen, I see you're speaking to us from Lviv this morning. Tell us a little bit about the VIP visit yesterday. Angelina Jolie making a trip to the city, talking to people who have fled from the war. Obviously, she works and is involved with the UN Refugee Council. Tell us how that's gone down in Lviv.
Well, that was a bit of a stir here. Actually, she was just a couple of blocks away from me when I was there in the park. And people were really excited to see her there. First, she came to a local coffee shop, and then all those videos that went viral came out. And after that, she went to a place where people, the evacuated people, the families, the children, the mothers, were staying, and she spoke with them. And that was really amazing. That was an emotional moment for many here, because people know who she is, and people know what she's doing in the humanitarian field. And so everyone was really excited to see her. And actually, many here made fun of a Russian-based magazine which mentioned that Jolie was in Eastern Europe, not far away, doing something with her backpack on. So they didn't even dare to write word Ukraine in the report. That's how apparently they're afraid of this word and of the name of this country. That was funny.
Pointing, but look, this is maybe an indicator anyway of increasing confidence in the stability of that part of the country. And of course, we also saw, didn't we, Nancy Pelosi over the weekend. And indeed, I believe the UK ambassador, Melinda Simmons, has said that she's comfortable to return to Kyiv. So all positive signs. Yevgen Matyashenko, lovely to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Just after 8:15, cost of living crisis now. We've been discussing this throughout the morning. We'll continue to discuss it here on GB News. It's affected almost everything, including the price of chicken, which is what we were reporting on today. Well, in a bid to tackle rising energy bills, the Business Secretary has written a letter to North Sea oil and gas companies, pressurising them to invest profits into speeding up domestic energy productions, right? Let's go to Liam Halligan on this, GB News business editor and economics editor on this one. Liam, where do we begin? If I was a North Sea oil and gas company, I'd be a bit confused. One minute they're the enemy and they have to cut their production and they don't want them drilling any more wells, and now everybody's saying, no, hold on, give us more.
Indeed, the war in Ukraine has changed perceptions greatly, Eamonn. A lot of realpolitik is coming into the government's views on energy security. It was only last autumn at the COP26 summit in Glasgow that ministers were boasting about the fact that North Sea oil and gas production is down, and it is down by about a half since the year 2000. But now the oil and gas companies operating in the North Sea are being encouraged to channel money into developing new fields. What's about to happen this coming week, those big North Sea oil and gas companies are going to declare their profits, and the oil majors are going to be making lots and lots of money because fuel prices are up so much because of that war in Ukraine. So what the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, is trying to do is to get ahead of that by saying to these oil and gas companies, you need to invest these profits in more production to enhance our energy security, so we don't have to rely on oil and gas from overseas so much. So we can bring those fuel prices down, those whacking great household utility bills down. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, of course, has gone even further. He's reversed his previous position and said he may even impose a windfall tax on these big oil and gas companies if they don't invest that money into higher production rather than just giving it away to shareholders in dividends. That is, as I say, a complete reversal of what he said just a few weeks ago. It's also a policy that Labour has been proposing for many months.
Liam, how do you see, the overall picture? We move from energy supplies to just the business of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. And the prediction is they are once again very shortly going to hike interest rates to the highest level for 13 years.
I do think interest rates will go up. I think interest rates will have to go up more than they would have done because the Bank of England's been so slow to recognise that there is a lot of inflation in the system. They'll try and blame it on the war in Ukraine, but already before Russia invaded Ukraine on February the 24th, inflation in this country was already at a 30-year high. Inflation in America was already at a 30-year high. Cost of living going up very strongly. I think what's going to happen now is, as well as fuel, which we've been focused on since the war in Ukraine, food prices are really going to come into the public consciousness and into the political debate. Finally, because many people know that food prices have been going up sharply in recent months. And again, the war in Ukraine has made that worse. Ukraine's one of the world's major chicken exporters, believe it or not. And that's why the price of chicken is going up in the shops. Russia and Belarus, its ally, they're one of the world's biggest fertilizer exporters. And that's why, as every arable farmer watching this will know, that fertilizer prices in this country as well have gone up from about 250 quid a tonne to up to £1,000 a tonne. That means farmers are sowing less. They're trying to get away with less fertilizer on their land. Yields will be down. And this is the really difficult thing to stomach, Eamonn. Just when we should be growing more of our own food, just when we should be focused on energy and food security to get the prices of both those things down in the shop, we're actually going to be growing less food this year, which means high prices are likely to continue into the future. It's not a good news story. It's a very, very difficult story. That's why, for me, the fact that Westminster seems so fixated on, Partygate and ministerial scandal and so on. Meanwhile, big swathes of the country are really worried about how they're going to feed their families. So I think it's up to us, GB News, other journalists, to continue to focus on these bread and butter issues. Because this food price inflation is going to get a lot worse, Eamonn, I'm afraid, before it gets better.
Well, it's certainly not a lot to look forward to. Liam, really appreciate your take on things. You're absolutely right. We've got to keep beating the drum on this one. And Liam will be back doing just that with his own programme On the Money, 1 o'clock today, as usual. Even though it is a bank holiday, he's not getting paid extra. He's in. He's doing that. That's inflation for you from 1 o'clock. Liam, thanks very much indeed. Cheers.
Cheers, Eamonn. Cheers.
Cheers.
Coming up, we're going to be taking a look at the warning signs for cancer that you could catch early. That's after the NHS data has revealed 3 million people were referred for checks in 2021. First of all, here's your all-important bank holiday forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy to start with some fog. It'll turn brighter but also showery. Let's get the details. Starting off in the southwest, and this morning's cloud is set to linger until lunchtime for many, with a few spots of drizzly rain, feeling markedly warmer than yesterday though. It's also looking mostly cloudy across much of the southeast and around London. It'll be mostly dry and any early fog should have cleared. It's a different story for Wales. Here the cloud is going to break up, allowing for some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. It's looking similar across many parts of the West Midlands. It'll be brightest for more northern parts with more showers here. Meanwhile, further south the cloud is set to linger. Coastal parts of northeast England may have some lingering fog as we head through lunchtime and into this afternoon. Inland, things will be brighter, but a greater chance of some showers developing too. Whilst northern areas of Scotland are looking mostly fine with some lengthy bright periods, it will be more showery for central and southern parts, though still some sunny spells. There'll also be a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland. Here temperatures are set to reach highs of around 15 Celsius. There'll be further showers as we head through the afternoon, with the cloud in the south breaking up. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Okay, welcome back to the programme. It is 26 minutes past 8. We're going to talk about cancer now. New data from NHS England shows the record-breaking 3 million people were referred for cancer checks over the past year. That's after the pandemic saw numbers dramatically decline in 2020.
So there's a massive backlog that had to be dealt with. But what are the best ways to keep yourself healthy and checked if you can't go to the doctor? Well, that's a conundrum. Professor Tom Powles joins us now in the studio to help us about this. Tom, just explain this to us. Obviously, the pandemic knocked everybody off their stride, the professionals, the patients, whatever. We're having to deal with that. Are we in a position to deal with that backlog?
That's a difficult question, and I don't yet know the answer to it. There's clearly a huge amount of investment in the NHS, and I think we all understand that on the one hand. On the other, the process that we've been through in cancer medicine has been complicated, in that during the pandemic, cancer continued to grow, to diagnose. And there are 3 or 4 components to it. Firstly, patients sensibly stayed at home, they were told to. And that created a huge amount of cancer in the community which went undiagnosed.
Yeah.
The issue with that is twofold. Number one is we know late diagnosis is associated with poor prognosis and poor outcomes. So many of those patients, in this report, if you look, you can see we're missing some patients. Inevitably, some of those patients that stayed at home would have died of cancer because of the disruption associated with the pandemic. Nevertheless, we're now coming out of the back of that, and I think people at home are beginning to say, I need to get back into the healthcare system. And part of that is cancer-related symptoms. And inevitably, there is a big bolus of patients who now want to have their cancer-related symptoms investigated. And that's why the numbers are shooting up. Yeah. The question is whether or not the NHS is well placed to deal with that. 2 or 3 important facts. The first is Macmillan suggests that 600,000 patients during this period of time have had their cancer treatment disrupted. We know cancer is a massive killer in the UK. 680,000 patients die of cancer every year in the UK. Compared to that, to the number of deaths this year of COVID or last year of COVID, actually they're quite comparable. So cancer remains our number one killer, will be in the future, and now we have this huge healthcare problem. Do we have the resource to deal with it, which is your question? The human resource we probably don't have right now. So I'm the director of Bart's Cancer Centre. We continue to work through this pandemic. We have shortage of doctors and nurses. We put adverts out, but we don't have the resource in the UK as it currently stands to fill those posts. Many people left during the pandemic. Being a nurse, being a doctor during this difficult time was very challenging. Also, new opportunities came up for many individuals. How can we now attract this new group of healthcare professionals into cancer, firstly? That's really important. And then secondly, how do we train them quickly to get them up to speed, because you can't just put an advert out for a whole group of new cancer doctors and say tomorrow, please turn on the radiotherapy machine.
I mean, I suppose a part of this will be importing doctors from overseas. We just saw the Prime Minister on a recent visit to India talking about trying to make it easier for lots of Indians to come with their visas. I mean, would that be an obvious solution, do you think? We're going to have to start importing more medics to deal with the crisis?
We're going to have to look at healthcare. We're going to have to look at what we need, and we do need more people. It's really clear. It's throughout the UK. It's actually a European problem. My friends and colleagues in the US as well have similar issues during this period of time. For whatever reason, cancer treatments have continued. They continue to advance. It's a super exciting area. You know, we've approved 5 or 6 new drugs in just the cancers I treat, but the healthcare resource, the people required, are not there at the moment in nursing, in pathology, in radiology, in oncology, and we need to bring more people in. And as we get better at treating cancer, we need more people to do that. And this problem's not going away quickly, because as patients live longer, cancer will inevitably grow in people. We're not going to cure this in the short term. So it is a terrific time to be in cancer, but we don't have that resource at the moment.
I suppose the elephant in the room is the state of the NHS and whether or not it is sustainable, whether or not it can continue in its current form. And I know that, look, you know, as NHS medics are very sort of evangelical and you know, sort of emotionally attached to it. Yeah. And also the short-termism of politics, obviously, politicians often don't want to tackle it. Do you see it lasting 10, 15, 20 years in its current form, or do you think something needs to change? Massive question, I know.
So that's a tricky question. And I don't know if I'm qualified to answer it. I have worked in the NHS for 20 years, and I'm the director of a cancer centre, so I should be able to have an opinion on it. But it is such a political issue that it's actually quite hard to speak about it. Am I attracted to the principle of free healthcare at the point of delivery? Of course I am. I can't imagine there would be anyone who wouldn't be. Yeah. And aren't we exceptionally lucky to have that on the one hand? And so that's point one. Point two is, are we in a position where the NHS is struggling in some areas? And are there things that we need to look at under the bonnet and try and improve it, in the knowledge that that may threaten some of those ideals that we pursue? That's a discussion that we probably need to have. I'm not the person to answer that, but we do need to have that discussion.
Professor, you keep on doing what you're doing. We need you and people like you, lots more people like you.
That's sweet of you.
Thank you very much indeed. Professor Tom Pauls is the director of Bart's Cancer Centre. If you're affected by that, get in touch with us at GB News or gbviews@gbnews.uk. With the time, just with 2 minutes, well, it's 8:32, that's what it will be. Coming up, we'll have the biggest stories from the papers. We've got Liz Kershaw, we've got Chris Akabusi. All we need is you after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 8:34. Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines. And Ukraine's President Zelensky says the first group of civilians have been evacuated from Mariupol's Azovstal steelworks and will arrive in Zaporizhia today. The spokesperson for the United Nations says Operation Safe Passage is being coordinated between Kyiv and Moscow.
Ministry of Defence saying it's likely more than a quarter of Russia's battalion tactical groups in Ukraine are now ineffective. That's more than 16% of Russia's entire combat strength. UK intelligence says it'll probably take years for Russia to reconstitute those forces.
Breaking news line this morning, Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has announced he will stand down at the next election. Last month, the former Justice Minister had to apologise after claiming his fellow MP Imran Ahmed Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice after being found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy.
And thousands of voters will have no choice who to vote for in Thursday's council elections. 91 seats have just one candidate standing, meaning they will be elected automatically. The vast majority are in Wales, where 72 candidates will be elected unopposed.
Okay, it's time to go through the papers this hour. We're joined by the broadcaster Liz Kershaw and the Olympian athlete Chris Akabusi. Very warm welcome back. Our last rip through. Liz, let's take a look at the story you've chosen from inside the Daily Mail, page 20. And this is about Extinction Rebellion-style strikers, what they're going to be doing in their latest climate protest.
Yes, this is the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, the RMT, balloting for a nationwide strike, train stoppages, and they're thinking of adopting the tactics of Extinction Rebellion by gluing themselves to the railway lines. Well, they're denying it at the moment, but it just seems like the most dangerous thing to do because a car can stop in a relatively short space, especially with high-tech brakes, but a train can, the momentum of the weight of the train, it can take a couple of miles to stop a train. So I hope not. And I just want to know what kind of glue all these people are using to glue themselves to roads and stuff, because down at the Seaside, doing a few repairs this last week, I pulled down this new roller blind and the fabric just shot off the roller. I tried to glue that back and it wouldn't, and a bit fell off the fascia of my house, and I tried to glue that. Something I want to know, what's the preferred glue of climate activists?
Preferred glue is a tack.
Oh, they don't glue?
No, you put a tack in it. Just hammer the tack.
No, but what the protesters are using.
Oh,
No, I'm talking about her blind.
Oh, right, OK, right.
You put a tack.
Well, it had got previous glue marks on it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Try the tack on that one.
Chris has got a more serious point to make about...
My concern is some of the younger, more idealistic protesters who get carried away by some of the rhetoric and some more elder, eloquent people. The unintended consequence, at some stage, one young person, young and vibrant, gets wiped out and becomes the martyr for the cause. You know, unintended, he or she's gone along, it could be your child, my child, grandchild, whatever, gets carried away, is there, glues himself to the track, herself to the track, gets wiped out. OK, they've got their pin up, their martyr for the cause, but then the reality is that a family's lost.
But doesn't that show you how desperate these workers are, these trade unions are, for someone to listen to them? Because I'll tell you, I've been doing this job 42 years, and I've never seen any mainstream media support unions or commentators talk about unions. Everybody is frightened of unions, but unions are there for a reason. The thing is, these people will lose their jobs, whether they're in the post office, whether they're working for one of the rail unions or whatever. Nobody cares. They'll lose their jobs, and these people have nothing to define their lives and no way of going forward. I put it to you, Chris, they are desperate. And instead of thinking about gluing this and our reaction to all of that, why aren't we saying these people have a point? Would you do their job? Would you be working doing the jobs that they would do? Because I wouldn't, and I think you've got to realise we've got to value people in society.
Yeah. So everything you said, great, fantastic. I think my point was all of this Extinction Rebellion, all of these protests that we're seeing where... I saw an article recently where a young mum, young kid in the back of her Range Rover, desperately trying to get to school, she absolutely loses it, and there's this young kid who are in the middle of the road. Now, the mum, behind a 2-ton car, starts nudging them. Now, the mum...
I saw that.
She could so easily run over a couple of kids. In her desperation, and she's a murderer.
Well, look, this brings up two different points, right? There's the right to protest, the right to strike, whatever. And then there is this whole business. We've got the Energy Secretary saying to the North Sea oil fields and gas fields, right, pump up your production, get this production going. Meanwhile, we've got all these Extinction Rebellion protests all around the country, people saying no to fossil fuels. Where are we at with this? I mean, suddenly it all seems to have disappeared. Are we going to produce more oil and gas? Are we not? Are we going to go with the green agenda?
Yeah, there was some minister in an article, and the headline was, coal, it's the future. You know, it's the answer to all our problems. So COP Out 26 or whatever it was called in Glasgow, that's all those photo ops and everything. It's all forgotten now.
When the headlines go from fish and chip paper, you would assume that the powers that be and the apparatchiks are actually working on answering some of the questions that you are now postulating here. So just because it's not on the front pages doesn't mean, I would hope to think, that those who are paid to really think this through... The real challenge is this, for me. We have a very short-termism in this country, this nation. We don't think the long term, and we're not planning for 20, 30, 40 years ahead, and actually sticking to a strategy to deliver in 20, 30 years' time. So when my grandchildren are in our position, they live in the world that we'd want them to have, as opposed to probably going to have.
But we probably need a twin-track approach now, which is an emergency approach, plus a statement to say we are committed to the COP treaty or not, because I certainly don't know where we're at now. No one talks about COP anymore.
No, it's disappeared very fast.
Strategy's come out, hasn't it? And obviously talking about the wind farms onshore, offshore, and return of nuclear by 2050. Chris, should we talk about PPE, another story that we don't really talk about as much as we did once upon a time? This is Times page 2. The unwanted PPE costing taxpayers £500,000 to store.
Yeah, exactly.
Per year.
To store... No, that's a day.
Oh, a day?
That's £500,000 a day.
Oh, my word.
To store...
That's a lot of PPE.
Yeah. So, now... If you link this to the cost of living crisis, what you're talking about in the here and now, what we've got £500,000 a day to spend to store some stuff in China. Still, it says here that there was that we're still owed. In an investigation of PPE spending on supplies by the National Audit Office published in March, it said the Department of Health and Social Care was still to receive 5 billion PPE items into the UK. So this is stuff paid for that hasn't really arrived here. We're still storing stuff over there. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, some old person is asking himself, can I eat or can I heat today?
Somebody's making a lot of easy money out of this.
100%.
Yeah, I'll store it. What, 500,000 a day? I'd store it in our house for 50 quid.
You know, but exactly. And so now, of course, I understand the big dilemma is we don't know whether COVID is going to kick off again back end of this year. So that might be another thing coming down.
No, I understand this. Look, at the weekend in our house, I said to my wife, look, I just need to clear stuff out of the house to give me breathing space. Let me think what I'm going to do. I said, what do you mean when you could? I says, we could take that sofa, we could take all these extra clothes, we could just store them in one of those storage box places or whatever it is, and then I'll have a think about what comes back or whatever. She doesn't think like me. She says, no, we're not. Do you know how much that costs? And she showed me the bill for this. And I thought, I needed somewhere to store stuff, but it's very expensive to store stuff. She says, just throw it out. Just throw it. Why can't you just throw it out in the first place? I get emotionally attached to
Yeah,
things.
we did exactly that yesterday. We went down to one of those storage
Lock-up
places,
places,
yeah,
yeah.
mostly full of work dresses, because got nowhere to put them all.
We just had that. We just had that conversation.
What was your thinking? Was your thinking you could have done two things? You could have thrown them out there and then,
Well,
brought them to the
I don't
charity
like
shop.
throwing things away, and I have to say I found the whole process yesterday quite traumatic. My husband was just scooping everything up. I was like, wait, I haven't checked. But yeah, we just needed to make space.
But isn't it therapeutic once they're gone?
It does look better.
I think
that this
so.
morning, yeah.
It's good for you. Anyway, I've got a solution. I've said the first really dry, sunny day, I'm going to take everything out of the house and chuck it on the lawn.
Yes.
And then
Bring
I'm
it
going to
back
do
in.
sort it all out into bags and boxes, and then I'm going to do a car boot sale, and Chris is going to come and help me. Because he said, won't you be like embarrassed, you know, and a bit self-conscious because people might recognise you. No, I'll be behind the counter going, no, you're not having it for £2. And Chris will be like, roll up.
Salesman, he would be a great
Yeah, it'd be
attraction.
great. So and then I'll think.
Can I bring a lorry load of my stuff up as well?
Well, it's every Sunday. I'm going to do a few, and I'm going to. I think this is the way to get over it, Isabel. Yeah, it's a wrench to part. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to do it for charity. Probably Red Cross, I think. It's relevant at the time. But yeah, I'm going to clear it because it's so depressing to see all this stuff.
I can't get rid of stuff. I feel sorry for my children. The day the old man kicks that bucket,
Yes.
they're going to come into my gaff.
I think of that too.
Yeah,
it's called the death. It's called the death clearance, apparently.
It's going to be a nightmare.
I had to do it for my mum 2 years ago, and it was so awful. I thought, I'm not going to impose this on my kids. But I just said to Chris, and my friend said, you must have 200 dresses. I said, like you, and the rest. They're in the huge wardrobes, they're in suitcases, they're in boxes.
For years, I've got a lot of dresses, but it just takes up so much space.
Mine are in 4 different sizes, so, you know.
I suddenly realised, you know...
Well, just you got that, Eamonn.
It's got a lot of suits. It's got a lot of suits.
It depends what's vintage or what's not. So suddenly you can't see something getting old, and then you put it on and you realise the legs are really wide or the waist is really high or something. And you think, but I got that 6 years ago or whatever, and it was very expensive, whatever. You've got to chuck. Because, as you said, you used the word, a lot of it's just stuff.
Well, you know, the double-breasted is coming back, isn't it? So I've got double-breasted from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, right.
You need to go to the same tailor.
Exactly.
You know exactly why I don't want to throw them out.
Exactly right. Got a few more. Yeah, look at that cut
You
there.
should have just done what Prince Charles did and just keep rocking the double-breasted suits even when they went out of fashion.
Yeah.
So they've come back round again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, any advice for throwing out? Have a magnificent house designed in a fantastic way.
Yeah.
Beautiful storage. You see, I look at that Grand Designs programme, right? And I go, yes, that's all right. But then when they
Where do you
start...
put your stuff?
Where do you put your stuff?
Yeah.
All these clean lines and clear spaces. I'd love to have a look around Kevin McLeod's house. We're not going to... Well, we might be able to do that, depending where he is this morning. We go to him live. Are you at home? Look, there's not a cupboard, there's not a shelf, there's not a picture on the wall. Kevin, good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm in an office in East London. How about that? Yeah, great. There's plenty of cupboard storage here, but I don't live here.
Well, look, listen, the reason we're talking to you today, it's come around again. Grand Designs Live. Where is it?
Yep.
What's the idea? What can you see?
Well, it's just behind this wall behind me. It's an exhibition. It's at Excel in London. It runs till Sunday. So it's a 10-day exhibition. We opened on Friday. And it's 5 exhibitions now in one. So we have bathrooms and interiors, and we have build, and we have gardens, and we have kitchens, and we have a new section all about green living. So we have a house that we built, which is a zero carbon energy exporting super energy efficient home, which in these troubled times is kind of quite appealing.
Well, that is actually exactly where I was going. I was going to ask you, a lot of people watch your show, they think the budgets people have are sort of out of reach, even in good times. But at the time when everyone's having to tighten their belts, how does this stay relevant? But I suppose the answer is that modern design and certainly putting modern design into old homes actually can save you money.
Yeah, right now, I mean, the theme really running through Grand Designs and Grand Designs Live is affordability. So We've got this series out at the moment on Channel 4, which is called The Streets, and it's sort of about affordable self-build and affordable custom build. So where you buy a kit, basically. So, it's possible to do and still actually achieve sort of passive house status and have zero energy bills almost, So, and I think that's, it's always been interesting, but now it's it's necessary, isn't it?
Kevin, earlier today we had what was he? The guy from Norway. He was
energy expert from Norway.
The very thing, and he started talking about heat pumps. And I hear this talk about heat pumps. We should all have a heat pump. Viewers and listeners have been in touch with us today, and they're saying, "Oh no, don't make that mistake." I'm not really sure what a heat pump is, how it works, and why people are a bit mistrustful of them.
10 grand a pop, apparently.
Oh, is that why? Is that why? Right, OK, so you must have, in the designs that you have seen recently, somebody must be heat pumping.
Yeah, indeed, and I'm a big fan. They're like a fridge. They work backwards. They take heat from the air or from the ground, and they put it into your house, but they intensify it in the process. And they are expensive. They're relatively expensive right now, but they're getting cheaper all the time, and they're dropping in price. And I think, funnily enough, at the current rate of installation, if by the time we get to 2035, we will more than have exceeded our target of refitting every British home with a heat pump, which is remarkable. I think pretty soon they're going to be, on parity in terms of price with boilers. So it's all a case of whether you want to be an early adopter, whether you want to be an experimentalist, whether you want to wait a little while, or whether you just want to wait a long while and get one, kind of super cheaply. But they're very, very simple pieces of technology, a bit like a gas boiler, and far more efficient.
Well, the lovely thing about your whole exhibition about Grand Designs Live is that we can all be educated in these things. You go there, you have a look around the various, what would you call them, stalls, for want of a better word.
Installations.
And people are showing off their wares. What I love about that is it's like going to a car showroom. You see the way your house should be, or the dream that you should really have. We were talking there before you came on air about stuff, about how we all have too much stuff at home. And storage, I cannot stand going to look at new houses and you say things like there's curved walls and things, and you say, but where would you put the wardrobes? And the estate agents come back with things like, oh, people don't use wardrobes nowadays. Oh, no, people aren't interested. No, tiny places with no storage. Storage is a very, very important thing. You've got to get it right, I suppose, in the first place when you're designing.
Yeah. Also, I think you can go floor to ceiling with storage because there's so much stuff you don't need every day. So why not stick it on the very top shelf? I'm a fan of basements, garages. I'm a fan of architecture, of course, and of self-build. And there's nothing like designing a house with plenty of storage in it for the, when you build. And look, I mean, I was listening to that piece when you were talking about storage, and I kind of think, on the one hand, I think the storage units are great. I like the idea of kind of at the halfway house where you keep stuff in a box for 6 months, and if you haven't used it in 6 months, you throw it away. And if you haven't had it in a year, I've got a season ticket to my local recycling centre. So I'm all the time down there kind of, trying to figure out how much I keep, how much I don't. And the trick, I think, is to get rid of stuff, recycle it, reuse it, reinvent it if need be. I've seen the most wonderful clothes turned into piano stools or upholstered furniture. And it's remarkable what you can do with a staple gun and an old coat. And I think the idea of recycling, I mean, we've got a big recycling centre here, sort of with inspiration. I think the idea of recycling stuff into a new lease of life, particularly with an old jacket or suit that you just don't want to wear because it's double-breasted, or an amazing coat that you could turn into an upholstered cushion or something like that, or a beanbag. Why not? Yeah. Pick up a trade, learn a skill, use the stuff, reinvent it, and it's still with you.
Along to Grand Designs Live at the Excel Centre in London, and people like Kevin are going to be there all this week. If you're interested in homes and designs, and indeed the TV programme, that's the place to be. Kevin, thank you. Always lovely talking to you.
And you, Eamonn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good luck with it.
Now, the Education Secretary has announced today that schools in England will be given access to data revealing how their school is using the National Tutoring programme to help pupils catch up on lost learning from the pandemic.
Well, we're now joined by Michelle Donnellan. Michelle is Minister for Higher and Further Education. Michelle, good morning to you. Just want to know from you, what sort of task are you facing here? So many children fell behind, were left behind because of that pandemic. What's next? What's going to happen? Can you fix it?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that it had an impact on children's education attainment. And that's why we've focused on this. We've invested $5 billion throughout the next 3 years. And one of the key flagship policies of that is the tutoring programme. Tutoring, as in the past, only really been for those that can afford it. But it does have a dramatic impact on attainment. And that's why we're investing and opening it up for any pupil that has been impacted because of the pandemic. The Secretary of State has written to schools today, but also to parents, to make them aware of the offer on the table and help them to encourage their school to get involved.
How intense is schooling going to be in the next couple of years ahead? I mean, you know, it can be intense for any of us. We think back at our own memories of it. But, you know, by and large, luckily I can look back at my school life, primary and secondary, and say, I quite enjoyed it. It was good. But I'm just wondering now with kids...
Well, you're thinking of Jules Oliver as well yesterday, the wife of the famous chef Jamie Oliver, talking about just how overly stressful schools have become and how she thinks that in many ways exams are actually a waste of time and that they're not that helpful for real life. What do you think about that standpoint?
Well, in terms of the additional pressure on young people, we want to remove some of that pressure by adding additional support in the form of tutoring so that they don't feel that they're behind on where they should be. This is not about piling on the pressure. It's actually about alleviating some of that. But we do need exams because we need a fair way of assessing people to move on to the next part of their academic journey. That's why we were so keen to get back to face-to-face exams this year, having had 2 years of obviously disrupted and different types of awarding of qualifications.
I want to ask you about Porngate, Tractorgate, whatever you want to call it. We heard from Neil Parish on Saturday that he's going to stand down. What's the answer to all of this? I mean, there's headline after headline making Westminster look really unedifying. And as a woman, I wonder what your reaction to that is and what you think needs to be done about it.
Yeah, it is important to say, as a woman, as an MP for 7 years, I haven't experienced any of these things. It is the minority who are letting down the rest of Parliament, that are damaging democracy in this country. And we must call it out. We have an independent complaints and grievances scheme. It was only set up 3 years ago. I would encourage anybody that has experienced any of these incidences to come forward. We need to make this minority know that they can't get away with this kind of behaviour. It's not acceptable in Parliament, just like it wouldn't be acceptable in any other workplace. And like my constituents, I'm just as appalled reading some of the stories that have been covered as I'm sure they are.
And your reaction this morning to the news that Crispin Blunt has decided that he'll stand down at the next election, and whether or not, I'm interested as well, whether or not you think in his constituency and indeed Neil Parish's constituency, whether or not there should be perhaps all-female shortlists?
Well, I think that completely misses the point. I find quotas demeaning to women. Women can certainly get there on their own merit. We've seen that with 2 female prime ministers in my own party. We have a Home Secretary who's female, a Foreign Secretary who's female. What we need to be doing is encouraging women to come forward to stand, removing the barriers, which we have been doing with organisations such as Women to Win, led by Baroness Jenkins. But imposing these arbitrary quotas does nobody any favours, in particular women.
Michelle Donnellan, thank you so much indeed. Michelle is the Minister for Higher and Further Education, speaking to us live this morning from Wiltshire. We've got to leave it there. Thank you, Michelle. We'll take a break. Back after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Senior MPs call for a major overhaul of Westminster's working practices.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. It is Monday, the 2nd of May. It's a May bank holiday. So welcome to breakfast on GB News. I hope you've been watching this morning or listening to us. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster here.
Happy Eid to you as well if you are celebrating a little bit later on today. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Radical action needed to review working practices in Westminster. A House of Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has spoken out after concerns about sexism and inappropriate behaviour by politicians.
And after an 11-day pause, more than 200 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday, and with weather conditions improving, more are expected today. GB News presenter Nigel Farage is there for us this morning.
Today marks the 40th anniversary of the sinking of the Argentinian warship, the General Belgrano, which was seen as an escalation of hostilities during the Falklands War. It was destroyed by the British submarine HMS Conqueror, with the loss of 323 lives. Our Home and Security editor Mark White will be back talking about this.
And it's a happy birthday to Princess Charlotte today, who turned 7. New photos have been released taken by her mother, the Duchess of Cambridge. Charlotte is pictured with the family dog, Paula.
And you've been very good sending us pictures of your family dogs this morning. What do you think of Charlotte's pick? Have you got one to beat that? You can join in, you can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
Senior MPs and House of Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle have called for major changes to Parliament's working practices following more allegations of misconduct.
Well, on Saturday, the Conservative MP Neil Parish resigned after admitting he had watched pornography twice in Parliament. Last week, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, actually spoke to Mr Parish before it was revealed that he was the MP at the centre of all of this.
And just very finally, Neil, while we've got you on these reports, and we know your Chief Whip is looking into them from a female minister about another Conservative frontbencher watching pornography on his phone. What's your reaction to that? I mean, it's pretty jaw-dropping, the suggestion that it's happened. I mean, frankly, whoever it is, I mean, surely they would have to have the whip removed, wouldn't they?
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
Is there a problem with the culture in Parliament, do you reckon? I mean, it's not just Conservative MPs, we should say, this is a cross-party issue, but there is a sense, I think, for people outside looking in, that there's a whole range of stories, even this year, involving different MPs, that gives a sense that there's a cultural problem inside Parliament.
I think if you've got sort of 650 members of Parliament in what is, a very sort of very intense area, I mean, you are going to get people that step over the line. I mean, is it, I don't think there's necessarily a huge culture here, but I think it does have to be dealt with and dealt with seriously. And I think, that's what the Whips will do in our Whip's office.
Well, meanwhile, a number of MPs have had allegations of sexual misconduct against them, referred to the Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme.
The former leader of the House, Dame Andrea Leadsom, says that scheme itself is not fit for purpose and more women would be at risk in the House until changes were made.
Well, this comes after the Conservative Party inquiry into the sexist comments made by one of their MPs towards Angela Rayner claimed that the Deputy Labour leader made the basic instinct comments herself.
In other news, this weekend saw over 200 migrants crossing the Channel following an 11-day hiatus attributed to unfavourable weather conditions, making passages off dinghies far too dangerous.
Well, Nigel Farage is in the English Channel today for us, and he brings us this report with his take on the situation.
11 days had passed without any boats crossing the English Channel, no dinghies whatsoever, which has led to a lot of commentary from many people saying, Rwanda works, they've stopped coming. Now, I think actually this is sort of wishful thinking because everybody wants an end to this crisis. It's wrong at every level. Tough words from Boris Johnson on this issue the other week. But the truth is, the reason boats haven't come for the last 11 days is there's been a persistent northeasterly wind, averaging about 20 miles an hour, leading to very, very short, choppy seas, difficult, unpleasant for any boat, let alone an inflatable dinghy. That's why they didn't come. Yesterday was the first calm day. We haven't got the official figures, and that's because it's a bank holiday weekend, but we're told over 200 came yesterday. My intel says 260 or 270 on 6 or 7 boats. What is interesting to note, since I first started coming here a couple of years ago, in those days, the inflatable ribs would carry on average about 16, maybe 18 people. Now, they're purpose-built, once only, one journey only boats, averaging about 40 people. So far this morning, there have been several sightings, mostly to the west of where we are right now. We are literally right in between the British and French waters, out in what's called the separation zones. And I'm sure within the next hour or two, we're going to start seeing more dinghies. It's going to be flat calm all week. Remember, before that 11 days when nobody came, the numbers that were running at 4 times the number that came last year. It is not an exaggeration to suggest that if we carry on as we are, it'll be 100,000 people that cross the English Channel this year, and 90,000 of them will be young men without any documents whatsoever. So look, I want Rwanda to work, but is it going to work? It already faces its first legal challenge. My suspicion is all the while we're part of the Human Rights Act, all the while we have the European Convention on Human Rights into British law, it's going to be very, very difficult to send people to Rwanda. I mean, goodness me, it's even hard to deport known torturers and terrorists. So we're here, it's active. The Royal Navy now are in the Channel. This is one of the big announcements made by Boris Johnson the other week. From what I can see, they're as good as useless.
the sides of the boats, the gunnels of the boats are too high for them to pick anybody up, and they literally follow border force, an RNLI around, and then tow the empty dinghies back into Dover. We've seen drones this morning. I mean, it is a full-scale military operation going on in the Channel every single day when it's calm. There is no end in sight, but if we start to see plane loads of people going to Rwanda, that would act as a serious deterrent. After all, why would you pay a trafficker €5,000 if you thought you'd finish up in Rwanda? So this is back on. I would predict this week be very surprising if not more than 1,000. Yeah, I'd say more than 1,000 will come this week.
Well, listeners and viewers, Nigel Farage for us there on the scene. Those are his views. That's his experience of what is going on. What do you think? Do you agree with him? Do you not agree with him? Do you have your own solution to all of this? He says Rwanda is the solution, Rwanda, and the threat of ending up in Rwanda as opposed to ending up in England. GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet at GB News.
Now it's time for that segment in the programme where we go on your doorstep.
So we're out and about again. Well, we're not out and about again. Our reporter, Bradley Harris, is out and about in South Wales. We have seen him this morning in Porthcawl, and he's still there. A nice day to be at the seaside, Brad.
It is, Eamonn, that's right. A fantastic day to be here in Porthcawl on Bank Holiday Monday. Just take a look at the view behind me. This is another iconic view of the sea here in Porthcawl. Those waves crashing onto the sea defences there. Of course, only a few months ago, Storm Eunice battered this town with huge waves. But I've come here to the Piccolo Bar to find out how tourism is impacting businesses up and down this seaside town, a population of 15,000 people. Louisa, you're the owner of the Piccolo Bar. Good to have you on GB News. Can I just ask you, tourism plays a huge part in places like Porthcawl, doesn't it, and your business?
It does. It's absolutely massive for us. I mean, it's what keeps us going throughout the whole of the year, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for the tourists coming down, we wouldn't make it throughout the year.
Yeah, and it's very busy already. Customers coming in for Bank Holiday Monday. How have you had to adapt your business with things like the pandemic playing a huge part in how your business has changed?
Oh gosh, yes. It's had an enormous impact on how our business has changed. From being able to come inside, since we had a huge extension 10 years ago, which changed our business, meaning people could come inside during all weathers, and then not being able to come inside because of the pandemic, which means takeaway only, and we've had to take a step backwards and operate from the kiosk again and do takeaway only for customers.
Well, this is a cafe that has been open since the 1990s with that part of the cafe. One of your biggest sellers is ice cream. It's very, very busy here in the cafe on a Bank Holiday Monday. Just going to ask, does anybody want anything at all? Ice cream's big seller. Any ice cream for anyone? We've got a strawberry ice cream and a mint. I'm going to try my hand at a strawberry ice cream, and I'm going to go back behind the cafe now into the kitchen. This is where all the operation happens. Because there is an art to pouring ice cream, Eamonn and Isabel. If you're watching and listening on radio, I'm currently going behind the scenes now. We've got some ladies here. Good morning. You're live on GB News. And this is where the magic happens. I'm coming right behind you because I want to try my hand to see how easy is it actually, let's be honest, to pour and create that perfect ice cream. Louisa, you've joined me in the back of the kitchen. This is the ice cream machine. It is. Just take hold of the microphone. Yep. I'm going to grab a cone, if you don't mind grabbing one for me. How does it, I mean, obviously you just pull it, but it just looks perfect when you see it on the big displays outside.
It is.
What's the trick?
Okay, you need a slightly steady hand. You need to pull the lever down.
Okay.
Very small round manoeuvres.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite quick.
Oh, that's...
Oh, okay. There we are.
Perfect.
It's quite... There we are. How's that? That's my first attempt at an ice cream. I mean, come on.
2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. Won't be getting a job here anytime soon. I'm just gonna. Who asked for a strawberry ice cream? There we are. How's that? There's no strawberry on it, but it's homemade. It's made on site, and I don't think that's not a satisfied face there, Louisa. But this is the point. Seaside town. You come for an ice cream, and he's not happy with that, is it? Just tell me, just quickly. It is homemade. It is a family-run business.
Yes, the family's been running this business for over 60 years in Porthcawl. We've been making this ice cream for 60 years, and we do it every day.
Well, look, good to chat to you. Good to get a little try of the ice cream machine as well. I think I'll leave it to the professionals.
Brad, you've made us so hungry. Do you know, if I was to be on a desert island and I had just one food, it would be ice cream. Ice cream, and then maybe some of the local pineapples hanging off the trees or the bananas or something with it. But that was a wonderful whopper of a whippy that you conducted up there. Brilliant.
What do you say to that? Nothing.
He's speechless.
Speechless.
I'd like to have taken his big poke there and just taken the whole top off it, and then maybe some strawberries on that or tinned oranges or something.
Yeah, it's that time of day when we're sort of thinking about breakfast, aren't we?
Ice cream for breakfast.
Wouldn't say no.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no as well. It's 14 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning.
Now, one of the commanders of a British submarine which sank a key Argentinian warship during the Falklands War says he stands by the decision to attack the vessel.
Well, today marks the 40th anniversary since the sinking of the General Belgrano in the Falklands War by the British submarine HMS Conqueror. The 323 lives were lost, and this proved to be the most controversial moment in the conflict.
Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has been looking into it.
There was a cheer as we heard the explosion, and the captain reported from the periscope seeing it, because we had done what our government tasked us to do, and we were very professional about it. Followed almost instantaneously with absolute silence, and as everyone had their own thoughts, thinking there were over 1,000 sailors on board the Belgrano, and they were doing what their government tasked them to do.
It's 40 years since Vice Admiral Sir Tim McClement was a young lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy, second in command of the submarine HMS Conqueror, as it shadowed and then fired on the Argentinian cruiser General Belgrano. It was one of the most controversial episodes in the Falklands War, with claims the Belgrano was sailing away from a 200-mile UK-imposed exclusion zone around the islands. But Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher agreed with her senior military commanders that the Belgrano posed a direct threat to the Royal Navy Task Force heading for the South Atlantic.
Admiral Woodward had 2 carriers and not very many Harriers, and the Argentinians had over 200 aircraft, so we had to protect our carriers, because if we lost one, then that would be the end of our ability to retake the islands. And at the time, on the beginning of May, Admiral Woodward believed there was a pincer movement with the Argentinian aircraft carrier to the northwest of the islands, coming with his escorting destroyers, and to the southwest of the islands, the Belgrano group with two destroyers as well.
The Belgrano, which began life as the American light cruiser USS Phoenix, had survived Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, only to succumb to 2 Royal Navy torpedoes. 323 Argentinians died on board the Belgrano. This notorious Sun headline at the time was later toned down as the extent of the loss of life became apparent.
It was the big turning point. They knew from that moment, I can remember being told, I was with the troops in the Canberra at the time, that this had happened. And within 2 days, of course, the Sheffield was sunk. And everybody in charge knew there was going to be a real war. Whatever talks might or might not happen, there was going to be a real war, and they realised there were still going to be problems, big problems.
Safeguarding the Royal Navy Task Force was at the heart of the decision to sink the Belgrano. Vice Admiral McClement says the actions of those on board HMS Conqueror were fully justified.
One regrets loss of life in war. Galtieri had invaded the islands. He needed to be evicted, and you use brutal force to try and shorten the war as quickly as possible so that you succeed. The Belgrano was a threat, needed to be taken out, and we did it.
There's no doubt the sinking of the Belgrano was a decisive moment in the Falklands conflict, as the Argentinian Navy retreated to port and played no further part in the war. Mark White, GB News.
Sorry, right. So the time is 18 minutes past 9.
Sorry, we're just having a
So even
debate.
40 years on, that just instilled so much emotion with various people. And you've been very good with your views on this. Most of you just saying it was a war. And they were in conflict with that. We were referring, just while we were on air and watching that report, some stuff was coming in because beforehand I had talked about pick a pineapple from a tree. And Isabel's telling me pineapples don't grow on trees.
Well, I believe pineapples grow in the ground. You pull them out by the... But, I mean...
Surely a pineapple is a pineapple tree. No, I would have thought like a banana tree.
Well, Megan's emailed in saying, please tell Eamonn, where has he seen pineapples growing on
And you
trees?
believe Megan over me?
I do, yeah. Anyone going to tell me in my ear if I'm right or wrong?
You think a pineapple's like...
In the ground.
Like a potato?
Like a carrot, yeah.
Don't be ridiculous.
No? I'm pretty sure they grow in the
Isabel, you
ground.
surprise
Somebody
me.
Google it.
Well, you do not... A pineapple does not grow underground, like a turnip.
Yeah.
How ridiculous.
Or a potato. Christian, anything? Google?
I tell you.
Oh, we're both right. But where does the...
We were listening to our producers talking to here. Look, you pick a pineapple from a tree. When are you just ever going to accept? You're like my wife. Why don't you just accept?
If I hear that one more time all morning, you're like my wife.
If you just accept, he's right.
No.
That's all you've got to do.
I still don't believe you.
So now you're showing yourself up now. Pineapples under the ground. There we go.
Right, here we go. You can grow a pineapple plant from the top of the fruit.
Oh, forget it.
Yeah,
we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with the showbiz news. And
It's the bank holiday.
Google
what can I say?
pineapple trees. Talk about them after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy to start with some fog. It'll turn brighter but also showery. Let's get the details. Starting off in the southwest, and this morning's cloud is set to linger until lunchtime for many, with a few spots of drizzly rain, feeling markedly warmer than yesterday though. It's also looking mostly cloudy across much of the southeast and around London. It'll be mostly dry and any early fog should have cleared. It's a different story for Wales. Here the cloud is going to break up, allowing for some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. It's looking similar across many parts of the West Midlands. It'll be brightest for more northern parts with more showers here. Meanwhile, further south the cloud is set to linger. Coastal parts of northeast England may have some lingering fog as we head through lunchtime and into this afternoon. Inland, things will be brighter, but a greater chance of some showers developing too. Whilst northern areas of Scotland are looking mostly fine with some lengthy bright periods, it will be more showery for central and southern parts, though still some sunny spells. There'll also be a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland. Here temperatures are set to reach highs of around 15 Celsius. There'll be further showers as we head through the afternoon, with the cloud in the south breaking up. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Just when you think no one's watching or listening, you're all out there and Pineapple
Everyone's
Gate
a pineapple
has taken over.
expert.
I can honestly say I never knew. I thought a pineapple grew from a tree. Isabel thought a pineapple grew like a turnip underground. It turns out neither of us are right. It grows like a pumpkin.
From the ground, yeah.
Right,
Grows
sort
up
of,
from the ground.
Sort of like
No,
this
I'm right,
spiky
really.
hairstyle thing, and then a pineapple hangs from it. And you didn't know either.
I didn't have a clue, no. I
didn't know
think I
either.
was like you, thought it was on a tree, but...
We're educated. Pineapple was right up there. I love oranges, which grow on trees.
Mhm.
And
I
I love
can
a pineapple.
Love it all.
There you are. Also love Ellie Phillips here, who's here with the entertainment news today. And there's a big party that we're not invited to.
Oh, this is the biggest party of the year. It's, of course, the Met Gala. It's back. It's held every year on the first Monday in May. It was moved to September last year because of COVID, so it feels like it was only recently that it happened. And you'll remember we had Kim Kardashian there in this head-to-toe...
You say that's Kim Kardashian, but how do we know?
Yeah, head-to-toe Balenciaga there. So the Met Gala is absolutely iconic. It's a fundraiser dedicated to New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art Costume Institute. It's also known as the Anna Wintour Costume Centre because the American
Who's
Vogue...
that? Who's that?
Kendall Jenner.
That's Kendall Jenner. So this is her last year as well. She is there in Givenchy, looking sensational.
Stunning.
And it is the event of the year when it comes to, you know, these red carpet galas. The money raised for it, goes to the centre. Last year it raised $16.4 million. So it does raise an awful lot of money.
Does the centre need that much money? Sorry, little question, but I didn't really realise it was a charity fundraiser. I thought it was just a sort of narcissistic event.
I think it's more like in America, museums and stuff do run predominantly on donations, whereas in the UK, obviously, we get funded through different elements of the government and arms like that, culture grants and stuff. They don't have that over in America, so they kind of do need that money.
Okay.
And the Met is enormous. You know, it's huge over there. Tonight, the dress code is gilded glamour, which is going to be incredible. So it's like gilded age feel. So think of a lot of opulence, royal gowns, things like that. It's going to be incredible. Co-chaired by Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, Lin-Manuel Miranda and Regina King. So what Anna Wintour does is she gets these celebrities to come with her to co-host these events, and that's going to be...
So Lin-Manuel Miranda, that's the guy who wrote Hamilton and Encanto and all these amazing musicals.
Superstar.
And amazing. And I believe all the Kardashians, I say Kardashians, but...
The Kardashian Jenners
are
yes.
invited for the first time.
For the first time, Page Six are reporting that they've all been invited. And this is a big deal because there are only 400 tickets to this event. Anna Wintour hand-picks them. And it's the who's who of the A-list of the moment. And like you said, all the Kardashians are rumoured to be there before because previously 2 of them have not been.
That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Kourtney and Khloe were excluded up until now.
Previously, but they will be there tonight. And then, of course, there are rumours that likes of Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz might make their first debut tonight.
Let's talk about Noel Gallagher. He's got a stalker.
This is absolutely bizarre. So we know a lot of famous people have stalkers. He is currently, he's on tour in Europe, he's been around tour, and he spoke on a podcast where he admitted that he has a stalker who makes sex gestures at him. She comes to the front of the stage for every single show around Europe, and then she waits for him outside his hotel room. It became a problem when she turned up outside his hotel room door and was knocking on the door trying to get in. He texted his security who turned up, and it's the funny moment of this you've got to take from it is Noel said he was sat on his bed. He'd seen through the peephole that this stalker was outside, so he sat there eating Pringles on his bed while his security wrestled her to the ground and got rid of her.
I mean, you can laugh about it, but it is quite scary.
Do you know why
stalkers are really frightening.
And it's really scary because he woke up the next morning thinking she'd, been taken away by the police. She was sitting in the cafe opposite, doing these gestures again.
Still there.
So it's actually really scary.
Well, listen, still there, neighbours, right? We're talking about neighbours coming to an end.
Yeah.
And Kylie and Jason have always been appreciative of it and starting them out in their careers, and they're going back.
They are. So they're going to go back to play their roles of Scott and Charlene. This is for the final ever episode. And what happened was yesterday they put on Instagram a picture of their scripts, just like a teaser of their scripts, and tagged each other in it. And you could see that it spelt out neighbours, and fans went wild. They were so excited about this. And the executive producers actually put a statement out and said, "We are thrilled that Jason and Kylie have come home to play a very special part in our series finale.
Great.
It's been an emotional experience for them, for us, and I'm sure it will be for our viewers."
So Scott and Charlene.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember their wedding. I remember it vividly. I don't know how old, 4
so
or something.
exciting. And I'm just so glad that they, like you said, it's it launched their careers and they're paying homage to it, and doing that is really good, because a lot of people try and shake off their early days, especially when they go on to big movies or selling out stadiums,
Yes.
and they're like, no, it's done amazing things for us.
But are we likely to see, think of all the famous names, the Hemsworth brothers, Margot Robbie and Russell Crowe.
There's so many of them. I don't think they will be back in it. I think the fact that they've gone for these two, who not only went to have massive careers, their characters in the show were iconic as well. So I think they've really ticked the big box there.
I didn't know Russell Crowe was in Neighbours.
Crazy.
What was he?
I don't know what his role was.
What
I got
a
it together.
key role.
And Natalie Imbruglia, she was in it. Holly Valance was in it. Like, so many Australian stars really launched their careers through Neighbours. And it's really sad it's coming to an end, but it will. And the final will be aired on Monday, the 1st of August.
OK, Ellie, thank you very much indeed. Well, the time's approaching 9:30 now. We've got to say goodbye. We're having a lovely time. Whatever you're doing for the rest of this Bank Holiday Monday, have a good one, Ellie. And whatever you're doing, have a good one as well. Thanks for having us in your homes, on your radios today, on your televisions. Hope to see you again tomorrow, bright and early, 6 through to 9:30.
Up next, Tom Harwood will be here with the briefing. See you tomorrow.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy to start with some fog. It'll turn brighter but also showery. Let's get the details. Starting off in the southwest, and this morning's cloud is set to linger until lunchtime for many, with a few spots of drizzly rain, feeling markedly warmer than yesterday though. It's also looking mostly cloudy across much of the southeast and around London. It'll be mostly dry, and any early fog should have cleared. It's a different story for Wales. Here the cloud is going to break up, allowing for some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. It's looking similar across many parts of the West Midlands. It'll be brightest for more northern parts, with more showers here. Meanwhile, further south the cloud is set to linger. Coastal parts of northeast England may have some lingering fog as we head through lunchtime and into this afternoon. Inland, things will be brighter, but a greater chance of some showers developing too. Whilst northern areas of Scotland are looking mostly fine with some lengthy bright periods, it will be more showery for central and southern parts, though still some sunny spells. There'll also be a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers across Northern Ireland. Here temperatures are set to reach highs of around 15 Celsius. There'll be further showers as we head through the afternoon, with the cloud in the south breaking up. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me